but meeting would have gone on, and who's the mayor just wouldn't have been resolved until the
Meeting to order, the regular meeting of the Stewart City Commission at 5:30 p.m. on Monday, April 27th, 2020. Please, well, let's take a roll call first, and then we'll have a statement. Statement first.
Yes, sorry, sir. This is the meeting of the City Commission. The date is April 27th, 2020. Pursuant to Executive Order number 20-69, issued by the Office of Governor Ron DeSantis on March 20th, 2020, municipalities may conduct meetings of their governing boards without having a quorum of its member present physically or at any specific location, and utilizing communications media technology such as telephonic or video conferencing, as provided by Section 120.54 Florida statutes. Procedures for the public comment by device. If you wish to speak during public comment, and all public comment will be taken at the beginning of the meeting for all agenda items, click Participants, then click Raise Hand at the bottom of the window. Your microphone will be unmuted when you are called to speak, and you'll be invited to activate your camera if you wish. Both will be deactivated once your comment time is completed. If you're attending by phone, press *9 to raise your hand. You will be called by your partially displayed telephone number, so please listen for that number. The host will lower your hand and mute you after your speaking time is expired. Please state your name and address prior to commenting. Board members and commissioners, as the clerk calls roll, you are asked to indicate if you are appearing in person or remotely.
Thank you, Mr. Dias. Ms. Kendall, will you call the roll, please?
Mayor Meyer.
Here in person.
Vice Mayor Clark.
Here.
Commissioner Bruner.
Here in person.
Commissioner Glass-Layton.
Here in person.
Commissioner Matheson.
Here and in person.
Am I supposed to say in person?
Would you clarify for the record?
Eula Clark is here at 121 Southwest Flagler Avenue, Stewart, current City Hall.
In person.
In person on the 27th of April.
Okay. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have no proclamations today. However, we do have a few employees of the month for March and April. First, we'll begin with the month of March. I'd like to recognize Mr. Jim Kolsky of Community Services.
That would require me to find him first.
All the way over yonder at the Flagler Center.
Jim, you there? There we go.
I am here. Jim Karolski, Community Services Director. It's my privilege to recommend to you the March 2020 Employee of the Month. Employed since March 2017, Jessica has made an impact on growing recreation programs within the City of Stewart. While Community Services Department has evolved over the past 14 years, I've been employed here to accommodate important initiatives and special projects identified by the Commission and the City Manager. I never forget our department's roots are in Parks and Recreation. Jessica reminds me of those roots. She's a true recreation professional with traditional approaches to programming and is very involved with the Florida Recreation and Parks Association. She's also very close to getting her bachelor's degree in recreation and sports management. Since her employment with the city, Jessica has produced and has been involved in many events such as Sailfish Sprint, our Movies in the Park, our Easter Spring Fling, our community kitchen nutrition classes with our WOW program, and she also works with various community groups and co-produce events such as Father Fest Night Out, our graduation bash, Kiwanis Backpack Giveaway, Back to School at 10th Street, Heritage Fest, and also the Public Works Department's Water Fest. Jessica has collaborated with various committees such as the NAACP, Martin County Health Department, Martin County Healthy Start, Father and Child Connection, the Treasure Coast Task Force, the Martin County Interagency Coalition. She is also currently working with the all-important Census Bureau, serving on the Complete Count Committee, and is a WOW ambassador, and now also serves on our 4th of July Fireworks Committee. Due to Jessica's dedication and outstanding work for the City of Stuart, I am proudly recommending her as March's 2020 Employee of the Month. Jessica, would you like to say a few words? Jessica is here.
I'm here, I'm short.
Hi, Ms. Clark. Congratulations.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm really enjoying everything I'm doing here, and it's my home. So I'm very grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. We're grateful for you. Congratulations. Thank you, Mr. Krolsky.
Thank you. Yes, that presentation.
And now for the month of April 2020, I recognize Chief Vince Felicione, the Fire Department.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. I appreciate it. Hopefully everyone can hear me.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to do April's Employee of the Month for Fire Rescue, which is Bob Cummings. Bob was hired at the City of Stuart Fire Rescue in 2014. Prior to the City of Stuart, Bob was a master mechanic for the Ford Motor Company for over 30 years. Bob is also a certified master emergency vehicle technician, which is a specialized training program for the repairs of fire engines and ambulances. Some months ago, City Vehicle Maintenance Department was short-staffed and did not have the ability to do certain repairs on our emergency vehicles. Bob stepped up, made numerous repairs to our fleet that ultimately saved the city large amounts of money. Bob's role is extremely vital to the day-to-day operations of our department. Bob offers to stay late to complete repairs, come in early, work after hours or weekends, whatever's needed to ensure our vehicles and equipment are available to serve the community. The daily operations of our department highly depend on his skills. Bob has diagnosed and repaired our emergency vehicles in a few hours where it normally would have taken days to send it out and get it back. So it is with great pride that I recommend Bob Cummings as April's Employee of the Month.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Is Mr. Cummings available?
No, sir. No, sir, he's not.
Okay. Well, congratulations to Bob, and thank you, Chief. We appreciate it. Appreciate all of our staff, especially you in public service, public safety. Okay, we'll move on to comments by our commissioners. Perhaps we'll start with Commissioner Glass-Layton.
One thing this evening, in our discussion regarding COVID, the next steps, I have been, and I was going to say the chief city manager, old habit, have been speaking with Christian Gorman, of Dynex Diagnostics. He's a city resident. He owns this lab. If you guys have heard of him, he owns a lab in Fort Pierce. So I just wanted to let you guys know that I wanted to share some information that he shared with the chief and I during our discussion. That's all that I have.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Matheson.
I just wanted to say that at last couple days ago at the county commission meeting, there was a lot of talk regarding public places reopening and recreational activities. And while I feel that's incredibly important here in the city of Stuart, I was happy to hear some county commissioners stress that, our top priority should be kind of structuring a plan, working with businesses and assisting that reopening, and coming in under a second would be recreational activities. I know they're incredibly important and they can help must relieve some steam, but people aren't going hungry because they're not going to the beach. And, you know, leading to that point, I'd like to remind everyone out there listening that there are no beaches in the city of Stuart, no matter how many times I get that email. I wish there were. And one more thing, I know I've said it every meeting, but if you do not receive direct deposit, it would behoove you to let the IRS know to get your stimulus check faster. All you have to do is go to irs.gov and click on Get My Payments and enter your information. There had been some problems with the website. I think it's been overloaded. I've been checking every few days though. It is up and running, and as of yesterday, it took my information. And please remember, when you do get your stimulus money, please spend it in America at American-made products or paying American people. They're to stimulate American economy. Other than that, you know, this has been going on well over a month with our new normal. Just ask everyone out there to try and be patient with everyone they're, you know, continually in contact with. Remain positive. We're in this for the long haul, and we'll beat it together. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Bruner.
No, I have no comment.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Mayor Clark.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I just have a couple of things I wanted to ask the city manager and the police chief. I probably should have looked myself, but just to see what our crime situation has been for the past month or so. And I wanted to just thank the city manager again and his staff. I haven't heard of blockbuster or anything going on in Stuart or anybody being especially afraid or unnerved. And I think that we have been weathering this very well at all areas, whether it's our grocery stores or gas stations, whatever, and the downtown area. So I just, you know, I'm just glad that our leadership and our staff has been able to, you know, make sure that everything is taken care of. And citizens out there who are listening or watching, please remember you can still come to the city of Stuart, call the city of Stuart. The doors may be somewhat closed, but we're still functioning, we're still open, and we're able to answer your questions on utility bills, on whatever, on the IRS taxes, refund, whatever it is. Go to our website. I've seen some people on Facebook complaining that our city leaders aren't doing anything. There's just a few. And because they've seen other cities where people are giving out food or handing out masks or something. But I think we've been working quietly with partnerships with other agencies in the community, and they've been taking care of things, so we have not had to have a line and ask people to come up and get certain things. So, but if there's a need, certainly we're here to answer that need and to look out for it. So I'd ask that we just, you know, people just make sure that they know that and understand that. And like Commissioner Glass-Layton brought up about the next steps, of course, I'll have some comments during that. And I just want to thank the staff for the way that they've handled themselves, and it's almost been seamless, the way that we've managed to maintain our city activity, and it's just, I just want to really, I mean, they all need to get Employee of the Month for this past month. So thank you so much. And I thank our city attorney, especially.
Why especially?
Eye contact.
No, it's just that, you know, it could have been worse, and we could have been having other things going on. And just to know that we have somebody there that we can call in and ask questions, and he's been feeling everything from environmental to EMS to personnel matters. And I just think that it's a good thing to know that there's somebody there. Of course, goes without saying.
We do have our police chief if you have any questions for him.
Chief Tuminelli?
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon.
So a comparative of April 2020 or March 2020 with March 2019, or even the few months before, December, November.
So over the past, I ran a report just the other day. Our calls for service over the past month and a half have declined about 27 to 30%. That goes for traffic crashes as well. We have not had any serious issues with social distancing or parties of 10 or more. And what were your other questions? Because there was a lot there, Commissioner.
No, well, just the numbers, you were right, it's a downturn in activity, arrest activity and so on.
Yes, ma'am. It's down about 30%. So we do see less traffic on the road, obviously, which creates less, crash reports and stuff like that, and calls for service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I have no general comments. Move on to comments by our city manager, Mr. Dias.
Yes, sir. First, item number 16 has been asked to be continued to a date certain of May 11th by the applicant. So when you're approving the agenda, please consider that. I also want to let you know that the Florida Water Resource Journal published our Safety is Priceless article about our Public Works Division safety program. And I want to thank Janine Wild for that. She kind of heads that program up and was the brain behind that program being put in place. So that was a great accolade for our Public Works Department.
Mr. Dias, would you say again what the name of the publication was?
Florida Water Resource Journal.
Very important trade publication, I take it.
Of course. And the last thing is, Vice Mayor had asked me about our utility billing and if we were recognizing any type of a pattern or those who may have been falling behind or not being able to, or becoming delinquent in their bill. Mr. Peters has reported back to me and advised that we have approximately 411 utility accounts that are in past due status. It represents about 1% of our revenue on our utilities. A majority of those accounts are in the East Stewart neighborhood. Since we declared our local state of emergency, we have eliminated late fees. We've changed our service charges, and we're not doing any disconnects for non-payment during this pandemic. And while our emergency declaration is in effect, we'll continue to do so until we resume our normal operations. We are, once we come out of this, we will be sending notifications to those delinquent, and we can make payment arrangements after that fact. We can't do any forgiveness of those due to our bonding issues as it relates around our utilities department, but there are other mechanisms out there to help those citizens. For instance, I know there is a nice fund available for utility payments that is coming through House of Hope and Salvation Army via the United Way. And so we can provide that information to those who may be delinquent. And that is all I have, sir.
Thank you, Mr.
Mr.
Dias.
Mayor, City Manager, could you just go over like the status with our parks and our one boat ramp? I know there's been some changes since our last commission meeting. Like maybe our tennis and pickleball courts we have.
Yeah, so our tennis courts and pickleball, we went to a declaration with 2 players per court, so no foursomes and no multiplayer basketball games. And then I had staff evaluate that, and all the reports I got back was that was being abided by citizens. One of our citizens reached out to the county to ask them to do a similar process in the county, who had closed all of theirs, and they have since reverted, and now they are allowing 2 people per court on their pickleball, tennis, and basketball courts. We are following the county's protocol for our boat ramps, which are closed on the weekend, open during the week. And of course, as we'll talk later in this meeting about our next steps, we'll talk more about what will come with the governor's recommendations.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda continuing item number 16.
Second.
11.
Okay, I have a motion for approval of the agenda by Commissioner Matheson and a second by Commissioner Glass-Layton. Is there any public comment on the agenda approval? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Agenda passes unanimously. Okay, we will move on now to comments from the public. This is our second meeting incorporating Zoom. So we have taken a different tactic here where we are now encouraging, asking our public commenters to provide all public comment during this time for not only general public comment, but all agenda items as well. So I have 2 green cards up here. If there is anyone out there virtually or at Flagler which would like to provide public comment for any item on the agenda, they may do so now by raising their hand. Speaking first is Ms. Helen McBride.
Do you want the microphone? White or?
Mr. Dexter, you wiped
I
it.
wiped it prior to.
Okay. Helen McBride, 921 Flamingo Avenue in the city of Stewart. And this is hard to do because I like to see what the developers are saying, and then if I'm on the project, I can talk, and if I don't, I don't. I'm here because of Hudson on the river. I have complete faith in you guys, but I do know when we first started this with the Pelican, it was a Coast Guard property. And then, you know, and I love it, all my visitors love the sandy part of the restaurant. I just wanted to make double sure, and I did read, but I'm no lawyer, what both of these young gentlemen have done, and it looks like a thorough job, that we always remember. It is city parkland also. And I saw in the, in a legal document in that very, it states, you know, the citizens and that. But as they say, I have faith in you guys, but just, you know, protect we the people. Because sometimes when you have that big chicken edge, then people say, oh, let me take a couple more yards. So for the future of this, our young children and the people, just keep doing a wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McBride. Next, we have former city mayor Troy McDonald.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm pleased to be here tonight. About a couple of weeks ago, I was contacted by Lori Goldstein, who's back here with her family, and she asked me to facilitate making arrangements to donate some N95 masks to the city of Stewart. So I'm going to bring them on up, and her daughter Muriel's the one who's been working on it. She's got 395 masks for our first responders.
Wow.
Oh, and I appreciate Dave Dias too.
But not Mike. Mary's gonna take some pictures. You guys wanna turn and kind of face and get any kind of a picture there. Don't get too close there, Heather. Yeah, Lori, you're supposed to do it.
My daughter's
That's okay.
yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Would you like to say a few words?
Sure.
Thank you very much. You're recognized.
First of all, I'd like to thank you guys. Mr. Wright, Meyer, Mayor, Ms. Wheeler Clark, Vice Mayor. Hi, Ms. Kelly Gosselin, Barrett, Mr. Barrett, Matheson, Commissioner, and Becky Byrne, Commissioner, and City Manager, Mr. Dias. Anyway, hello, my name is Sarah Sher, and I want to thank you for allowing me to be present here today. I go to high school in Martin County, and I've been doing homeschooling since all schools shut down due to COVID-19. I'm speaking to my parents, Miss Lori Goldstein Sher and Dr. Elliot Sher, and my brother Scott, who is here today, as he is currently a second-year medical student, and he can come to school. And the thought occurred to me,
do my part and help out Martin County. I've been asked by parents if I could donate my 95 masks to those in need. It is so important to stop the spread of the virus, and so my parents bought 1,000 masks to donate. Then I decided to create a GoFundMe page to donate even more masks to our first responders and community who are fighting an invisible war. We must pull together and work together to care for one another. My nonprofit is Master Martin, and you can donate there. I want to personally thank the people who dug down deep in their pockets to support this cause. Anything, $5, $10, and as much as helps, and it's much very appreciated. Again, this is a nonprofit organization where 100% of all money raised is going straight to purchasing masks. Check out my website, www.masksformartin.com/. If you need to contact me, you can email any request for masks at masksformartin@gmail.com.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Mr. Nick Blunt, former Commissioner Mr. Nick Blunt.
Good evening, Commissioner. I'm here to address an item on the agenda. I noticed that the public to speak on any of the items. We're actually part of Housing Solutions Council, which is item 17. So they woke me up back there. I expected to be out there for a while. I've spoken before to this Board of Commissioners about our organization. And I just want to remind you again what our mission is and what we're trying to do. Our mission is a citizen-led coalition of community leaders working to support housing opportunities for members of our workforce through action, education, advocacy, and facilitating partnerships. A little bit about our history. In 2017, a small group of individuals got together and began discussing the need for affordable housing throughout Martin County. We had dozens of meetings with key citizens and business leaders and elected officials throughout the county and the city. So a grassroots group began, and it was known as the Housing Solutions Coalition. And after several meetings and the interest and support group of what we were doing, the coalition became more formalized and incorporated last year as Housing Solutions Council, which is a nonprofit entity. Based on some of the generally accepted economic guidelines, families should budget no more than 30% of their household income on housing costs. There's a report called the Alice Report that's endorsed and commissioned by the United Way, shows that 38% of Martin County households are considered to be a working population whose salaries do not meet Martin County's cost of living. And that means that they're paying more than 30% of their income for housing expenses. In many cases now, they're paying upwards of 50% or more for their rent or mortgage payments. So our group is targeting a group of people in the community who earn between 50 and 80% of what's called the area median income. For Martin County, in this region, really is 59,500. Just to translate that number we're targeting are those families who have a household income between 30,000 and 48,000. And that group is kind of a unique group. They make more than what qualifying for subsidized housing, but they're far below what incomes are needed to pay market rate here in Martin County. So I know that there is a proposal for your discussion tonight to talk about the Haney Creek property north of the river. We're interested in that property. We're very interested in that property. See that as a viable option for helping us with what we're proposing. Just real quickly, our plan would be to build somewhere between 40 and 50 units on that property. We think with the city supporting us and because land costs are a big part of the overall cost to get those costs down. We think working with the city through some lease agreement, whatever, we'll be able to get the costs down where we can make this viable and support the needs. So that's our proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Blunt.
Thank you.
And during discussion, we may summon you or some of your other partners back up for question and answer.
I just wanted to comment on your mask. That's a good looking mask.
Thank you, Mr. Blunt. Are there any other public comments here in this room? Are there any public comments at Flagler?
There are not.
Do we have any hands raised online?
I do not see any.
All right, I'll move approval of the consent agenda.
Second. I have a motion for approval of consent calendar by Commissioner Glass-Layton and a second by Commissioner Matheson. Is there any more discussion on this? Seeing none. Ms. Kendall, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Matheson,
Yes.
Commissioner Glass-Layton. Yes. Commissioner Bruner,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Clark,
Yes.
Mayor Meyer.
Yes. Consent passes unanimously. Moving on to commission action, item number 11, amendment to federal highway maintenance agreement. Mr. Mortel, would you read the resolution to the record?
This is resolution number 40-2020, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Stuart, Florida, authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute a District 4 memorandum of agreement between the State of Florida Department of Transportation and the City of Stuart relating to the proposed roadway landscaping improvements within the right-of-way of State Road 5, which is Northwest Federal Highway or US 1, from Roseville Bridge, northern terminus to Northwest Baker Road, providing an effective date and for other purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Mortel. Ms. Gandhi-Softis?
Right here.
Thank you. Do we have a mic for you over there?
No.
Let's get her mic up. Thank you, Ms. Mortel. Ms. Gandhi-Softis, you are recognized.
Kunal Gandhi-Sapta, CRA Administrator for the record. This is related to the median improvements that the board approved on US 1 from north of the Roselle Bridge to Baker Road. That is expected to go into construction in summer. We are required to maintain that landscaping in the median, and FDOT requires the MOA agreement to be executed in order for us to start the construction. And this is similar to other median improvements that we've done on US 1 and that we continue to maintain.
Thank you, Ms. Gandhi-Softis. Are there any questions from the board? Commissioner?
Yeah. On this is where we pay so much a month for landscaping, right? I was just, I thought it was a lot of money. But how long is it? Is it 800 feet?
It's about 3,000 feet of improvements that we're going to be doing.
Okay.
So the annual cost is going to be about $14,000.
Okay. You answered it. Thank you.
Commissioner Glass-Layton?
Yes, just looking at the backup, it says the funding is either going to come from CRA funds or Public Works maintenance. It's probably going to determine where it comes from because it's going to be coming from the yearly. I mean, those are completely different.
Yeah, we will probably have to discuss that with the city manager, and it'll be part of the next year, fiscal year 2021 budget. So there'll be something to discuss together as staff.
Of course, that'll all depend on what our revenues and expenses are of where it sits. I'm sure Dave Peters would like it in her budget. I'm sure she'd like it in Dave's budget.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
So Mayor, if there are no other comments, I approve resolution 40-2020 regarding the landscaping memorandum.
I have a motion for approval of resolution 40-2020 by Vice Mayor Clark and a second by Commissioner Bruner. Is there any other final question or comment from my colleagues on the board? Seeing none, Ms. Kendall, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Glass-Layton,
Yes.
Commissioner Matheson,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Clark,
Yes.
Commissioner Bruner,
Yes.
Mayor Meyer.
Yes. Resolution carries unanimously. Moving on to item number 12. 604 Ocean Boulevard Impact Fee Credit. This is a quasi-judicial item. Mr. Mortel, will you please read the resolution summary into the record?
Certainly, it's resolution number 48-2020, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Stuart, Florida, establishing an account reflecting the surplus residential impact fee units pursuant to Article 3, Section 32-68E of the Code of Ordinances, providing for an effective date and for other purposes. And although this is quasi-judicial, recognize it isn't a full-blown PUD. It's simple. The reason it's quasi-judicial is because you as the commission are going to have to determine findings of fact. Essentially, the applicant is John Layton, and he's requested that the city pass a resolution determining the number of available impact fee credits that's currently in one location that's surplus in nature that he is seeking to be designated so it could be transferred to a new location in the future under the new Section 32-68 of the code, Article 3 that was adopted. Historically, the property of record, based upon the property appraiser records, was originally known as Atlantic Court Apartments, and there were 57 units there.
Mr. Mortel, maybe we'll swear in before we, is that okay?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, because Stephen Mayer isn't going to be giving any presentation. What we'll do is, it's just going to be Mr. Layton and his attorney.
Sure, okay, thank you. Do any commissioners have any ex parte communication to disclose? Commissioner Leslie?
I have none, and I'm here with an open mind.
I talked to the applicant and his attorney, and I'm here with an
Yes, I spoke with Mr. Layton and his attorney, Mr. McCarthy, and I'm here with an open mind.
I've spoken to city staff.
I've spoken with staff and the applicant, and I'm here with an open mind. Now, Mr. Mortel, will you swear in?
I don't know if anybody's online. I don't.
Stephen is here.
But I don't know if anybody's online. That's going to be, I'm assuming no.
Oh, no, we don't.
Okay. For the record, I'm swearing two people. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record reflect that the applicant and Mr. Mayor were sworn. And moving forward, as I had told Stephen that I would just present to the city because of the nature of it. Obviously, I'm the city attorney. That's just evidence, simply presenting the matter and then transfer to Mr. Layton for proof. Burden is going to be on Mr. Layton to prove that this was in fact Atlantic Court Apartments, and in fact there were 57 residential units. If the commission finds there were 57 residential units, all of less than 800 square feet, it has the right under our code 32-68E to determine how many units are left. The presentation included an application which demonstrated that approximately 10 units were used for the development of 5 townhouses in a commercial project, leaving 47 units. And if in fact the commission were to find that, the resolution is multiple in nature. Number one, you'd be finding the number of units. Number two, the square feet of the units, because for example, 47 800 square feet units is a different calculation than 2,300 square feet. And the property to which the units shall be designated for the purposes of moving forward. With that, I'll hand it over to Mr. McCarthy.
Before you do, Mr. Mortel, I would just like to clarify. My reading of the code is that this is in two parts. One, the commission passes a resolution determining the number of impact fee credits that are transferable. Then there's a second approval process whereupon the commission approves the transfer to a new property.
I don't know that the code has a hearing on the transfer. I think that if you determine it, I think that the code says the city manager can do that directly.
It says that the applicant must request that they be transferred during submittal for the project, but that the commission, it specifically says that the commission has approval. So I just wanted to clarify, we're only talking about the calculation of the impact fee credits today. We're not talking about their actual transfer today.
There's no project pending to where they can transfer to at this time.
That's right.
Mr. Layton's just here asking you to determine that 604 Ocean Holdings is entitled to a surplus number.
Okay, thank you. McCarthy?
Terry McCarthy for the applicant. Pleasure to be here this evening. The house in over a month. It's making me crazy. also want to applaud the commission because your timing of this ordinance was rather timely. Couldn't have predicted it at the end of this now. This will certainly serve as an incentive once we get out of this for people to build in the city. As I was coming over here this evening, I was thinking to myself, is there anyone in town that doesn't remember the Atlantic Court Apartments? I don't remember how old I am. When I first came to town in the early 70s, I worked in the county attorney's office, which is where it was the old courthouse at the time. That's where our office was, east of town. So I was going by the Atlantic Court Apartments twice a day to work. So I was very familiar with it. And if someone told me there were 107 units there, you didn't even convince me. It was a very busy place. I can't forget that when we came through with the development place, Larry Massing, member of your MPA, said that his grandmother actually lived in this. So we had submitted to the city, it should be in your packet, proof of the property appraiser's office that there were 57 units. Say, only 107. We had me. And when Mr. Layton acquired all of this, and Mr. Layton still owns the commercial building that is there. And the city gave credit for 10 of the 57 units when that project was done. So we're here this evening, and I think we've submitted to you to get the ability at some time in the future to transfer 47 of those unused units. Now, the concept of recognizing that impact, the developer shouldn't have to pay twice for impact, is not new. In Florida, it's not new in Martin County or the city of Stewart. You get credit for the impact that was there when you bought the property. Those units were impacting everyone in Stewart back in the day, and I would say they impacted the other persons. And the concept that units can be credited and transferred to other sites is not unique in Florida. It may be unique in Martin County with the passage, but it's not unique transferability. So I believe that we have demonstrated to the satisfaction of a reasonable person that there were 57 units and Mr. Layton owns the property, and 10 were used up, leaving 47 units left to be transferred at a future date. That would rest at a future date where the transfer to. But tonight we set up a bank, if you will, at the city, 47 units, the county transfer. Mr. Layton is here. Have any questions?
As a point of clarification too, I just want to put on the record that the applicant has submitted Exhibit A, which is the title to 604 Ocean Holdings. Exhibit B, which is a copy of the property appraiser's records from 1994, indicating that there were 57 units located on the site. And Exhibit C, which is a copy of the assignment of permits and developer rights dated August 30th, 2016, demonstrating that Mr. Layton still has a claim to rights. I mentioned that just so that it's record the part of the file.
Thank you, Mr. Mortel. I just would like to respond, and I agree with the sentiment that a developer should not have to pay twice for impact fees. However, just to clarify the record, impact fees for this project originally predated the charge of impact fees. So this wouldn't have been paying twice, just to clarify that for the record. And just to reiterate, I pulled up the code here, we just briefly discussed before, 32-68, Section D, transfer of city of Stewart surplus residential units. 1, a request to permit the transfer of surplus residential units, if any, shall be submitted simultaneously with the property owner's application for development order or permit. A, all requests to permit the transfer of surplus residential units shall be approved, by the city commission. And then in Section E, procedure for transfer. 1, the resolution shall identify the original source. 2, the resolution shall determine the number of excess units. A, it is the intention of this section that the resolution provide detailed information pertaining to the calculation of the excess impact fees, etc. So I would just like to say there's a preponderance of evidence here, and I would say that we have calculated that. So, are there any questions or comments from my colleagues?
I have a couple of questions, I guess, for our city staff. For the record, could you let everyone know what the current value is of one impact fee, or an algorithm, what the current value of 47 units of impact fee based on an 800 square foot?
He might have it with him tonight. I don't have the chart to do the value of the impact fees, but I know that 800 square foot impact fee is about $4,000. I think, John, maybe.
Let's have Steph answer.
I don't,
Mr. Mayor.
I actually don't know the impact fee calculation. I don't do that, so I don't know the exact figure, but I've heard that this would amount to approximately 200,000. That was
So roughly $200,000.
That was my understanding.
What year did the city of Stewart start collecting impact fees?
probably in 1984.
Yeah.
I would count that.
1984, 1985.
It was in the 80s.
And what year was Atlantic for apartments built?
Certainly prior to 73.
Prior to 70. So it'd be safe to say 100% certainty for the record that the applicant in this situation did not pay twice. No money at all was transferred. Is that a correct statement to the city of Stewart? $0 were transferred in impact fees to the city of Stewart for those 57 credits.
I could only assume that to be the case. Yes, I don't believe the city had, or the county back in the day,
Required fees at that time. So do you have any evidence that there was funds paid to the city of Stewart for these credits that we're discussing now that are worth approximately $200,000?
the only evidence I have is not the payment of funds, it's the impact on the facilities that was there. The concept of impact fees is that you should, that a developer should pay for the impact on the city or the county, as the case may be. All jurisdictions recognize that when there is an impact in place, that you get credit for that impact. You don't have to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's already there. And in this particular case, the city did recognize when this property was developed, that the owner of the property was entitled to 10 credits against the 57 impacts.
So in my comments, I cannot support this. Later in the agenda, we're going to be talking about an item from the Housing Solutions Council that's asking to be discussed with an option of city-owned land. When this ordinance was brought up, I mentioned that I could support it if the transferability was tied to affordable housing. The applicant is not providing any sort of dollar amount or any sort of fund at any time from the origination of these credits. So that's where I stand. There's no way that there are no credits paid twice in this circumstance. Maybe in future circumstances will be different.
Commissioner?
Yeah.
All right. I have just a
Commissioner Blaslake?
quick question. There's a lot of information going around, and I just kind of want to hear again, Mr. Martell, what did the applicant have to prove tonight in order? What specifics does the code are we looking at? Because I'm hearing a lot of different things. Are we?
The burden is to determine, before we transfer the impact fees, I think it's a bit easier to understand it, that if you were to build on site Like, for example, where the triangle was built across the street. When the triangle was built, the developers tore down buildings that had been there since the 50s and 60s that didn't pay impact fees as well. Those buildings were entitled to impact fee credits because of whatever their square footage was or whatever. So the determination was, how were those credits? They were commercial. In this particular case, they were residential credits. How do you calculate residential? Residential credits is what was the existing number of units in the building and what were the square footage of the units in the building. In this particular case, the documents attached to B or A said that it was a 57 unit studio type apartment building or one bedroom apartment building. They were all less than 800 square feet each.
So that's what we're here to determine tonight, is how many units were there, correct?
That's one of the determinations.
And we determined, based on this evidence, that there were 57 units there, is that correct?
The evidence presented by the applicant was that there were 57 units. Until you guys motion and approve it, you haven't determined that there was anything, that there's anything. But the purpose of the resolution would be to, that's the request.
I just, because there's a lot of other stuff going on, we're talking about, you know, how much the credit is. I want to make sure we're discussing what we're here to discuss tonight and base it on what our code says.
Thank you, Commissioner, and I agree with you there. I've read and reread this small section of code, and nowhere does it contemplate the value of the credit, unfortunately. It only talks about the units and the calculation of those units of that credit. We're doing that procedure for transfer for the code with the applicant providing that evidence for us to determine the value and the number of credits.
And I will tell you that the value was in the original drafts, and the finance director had a concern about value because it created some auditing problems for the city. But in addition to that, the value can go up and down. Like, for example, if Mr. Layton had brought this 3 years ago, the value would be almost double. But since then, we entered into an interlocal agreement with the county, and the impact fees amounts dropped by 50%. So if we had set it at value, that would have been a number that had to be booked as a credit. Whereas by setting it at unit, it travels with it. And of course, in the future, it could go up, so it benefits you going the other way too. But that's why it was set at units.
I would, Mr.
Vice
Mayor,
Mayor, yes.
I have a question, just to make sure. If I were to move a motion to approve this, the findings would be that it's, the 47 units, because even though there were 57 units, there was a commercial construction that took away approximately 10 credits. And so that's why our number that we're working with, if we're agreeing to transfer anything, it would be 47, is that correct?
That's what the application request.
Commercial plus residential, the townhouse.
Okay. So with that, and with, I think Commissioner Glass's asked about what findings we need to have. I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 48, 2020, regarding this matter with the specific findings that yes, the property is owned by the applicant, and that there were indeed 57 units, and the potential transfer to be allowed would be 47, and that these properties were built at a certain time, and we understand that. I don't know what else, what are the findings we need to find.
Square footage,
No, less than 800 square foot for those 57 units. And that's it. I see that the legal description has been appropriately included, and the previous history of the development has been appropriately included.
Would the Vice Mayor clarify her motion?
to approve resolution number 48, 2020 as proposed by staff and including the findings that were, itemized by the, city attorney when he discussed the specific findings, and our discussion is on that those findings are, adequately included. And you can repeat those findings again, Mr. Martell.
Section 3 of the resolution states, the commission determines that there currently exists 47 less than 800 square foot impact fee units on parcel control number 04-38-41-035-000-00060-0. Section 4 says the development department shall establish an account in the name of the owner of parcel ID number, which shall reflect that as of the date of this resolution, the parcel has 47 surplus residential impact units based upon the units being 800 square feet or less. This resolution shall be recorded to run with parcel number 000000060. But that's it. But they're in section 3 and 4.
Ms. Kendall, do you have the motion? Okay.
But section 3 and 4 in the resolution.
I have a motion by Vice Mayor Clark and a second by Commissioner Bruner. Before we take the vote, I would just like to say I understand where you're going, Commissioner Matheson, and I agree with you in spirit. I'm reading the letter of the code, but remember we have 2 bites at this, and I'll encourage you and everybody and the applicant to look at Senate Bill 1066 that passed the legislative session this year. Hasn't yet been signed by the governor, but it would actually create a statewide approach to impact fee transfer. So we have the opportunity to do this on our own terms before that takes effect. Ms. Kendall, will you call the roll, please?
Vice Mayor Clark,
Yes.
Commissioner Glass Layton, Commissioner Bruner,
Yes.
Commissioner Matheson, Mayor Meyer.
Yes.
Thank you.
Resolution carries with Commissioner Matheson voting nay or no. Thank you. Moving on to item number 13, approval of Hudson's on the River lease, formerly Pelican Cafe. Mr. Mortel, will you read the resolution into the record?
This is resolution number 49-2020, a resolution of the city commission for authorizing the mayor to execute land lease between the city of Stuart, Florida and Hudson's on the River, replacing the Pelican Cafe lease, providing an effective date and for other purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Mortel. You are the staff person on here.
I'm going to get up and walk away from the microphone, but before I do, I just want to say I'm handing out to each of the commissioners a new page 5. I've met with the attorney for Mr. Matakaitis, and I wanted to add language to paragraph 4.3 of the agreement, which referenced the FERDAP grant that was received by the city. And the language that I'm adding says, Florida Recreational Development Assistance Program entered in agreement with the city of Seward on September 7, 2001 for the development of Flagwood Park pursuant to the terms of the grant agreement. The land described in the grant will remain in compliance with the Florida Administrative Code 62B-5.059, and therefore land which is developed with FERDAP funds shall be dedicated in perpetuity as an outdoor recreational site for the use and benefit of the general public. This is the same language that existed before. It's related to the FERDAP grant. I just want to make sure that it's in lease agreement so that we were all aware of it. It carries forward.
Mr. Mortel, while you hand that out, when you return to your desk, I'd like to ask you if the applicant and the applicant's attorney have taken that proposed amendment to the lease. Have they accepted it?
They've accepted it, and I've actually changed that whole page. So that page 5 will be submitted with the lease. The only thing on the page that changed was that language I read, but it's already been submitted to me, and I've got 2 signed leases from the applicant in my possession. Essentially, the city manager obtained an appraisal, negotiated with the applicant, and entered into a lease based upon the fair market appraisal for the property. The intention is for the applicant to take over the business and operate it as Hudson's on the River, and to construct a air conditioning facility at that location, which will continue to remain as an ancillary use to the park, and operate as a restaurant and cafe. And I know that Mr. Vitale is available on the Zoom somewhere. I think I can see a picture of a booth.
Right.
There he is.
Mr. Martel, before we move to Mr. Vitale, okay, so we're adding, both parties have agreed to add the language in section 4.3, page 5 of the lease. But so in discussion between you and I regarding this item, we had talked about potentially having it reviewed by the DEP. That's something that that staff is recommending.
Well, it's standpoint of having it reviewed by the DEP. The language doesn't need to be reviewed by the DEP because obviously that needs to stay in there. The question is
the proposed development,
the project itself. And I brought that up with Mr. Vitale on behalf of Mr. Matakaitis. And I think that it's their position that they're willing to risk it. In other words, it's their position that if their proposed project doesn't meet the DEP approval, that they would continue to operate the business in another way, or they'd refine the project to fit. So that's the position they gave me. They're right here. You can ask them directly. That's what they said.
Well, that seems to me like we're putting a lot on risking and speculation, and we have no mechanism, if it is denied, to then have any control over, or do we? Do we have any control over how they choose to operate or not? Not in this rewarding lease.
This lease says that they have to build this building by October, or the city commission can terminate this lease. So if they couldn't build the building by October, that's why I want the language in the lease. I don't want them to blame me. Right? It's essentially
Mike.
Position, I suppose they can terminate. Yes.
Actually, that's January for, hi, this is Steve Vitale, attorney for the tenant, the proposed tenants. Actually, I believe the lease language requires the tenant to obtain the permits by October 1st and then complete the construction by January 1st of 2022.
Okay, yeah.
2022 is
but I don't know when the permit, but the permit, I mean, can't get the permit if the DEP doesn't approve it.
Right. So I guess that's what my follow-up question is. What's the reality?
Right.
They're going to apply for a permit, and then they're subsequently going to apply for a DEP permit, correct?
Well, that would be one of the permits they have to have.
Right. So I'm saying, so they're going to know
Right.
for 2020.
They're not going to start construction without it.
Yeah.
So
Any of my colleagues have any comments or questions? I don't want to hold the floor for too long. I have more of them.
Just a general comment. Since we
Vice
all
Mayor?
watch this parcel change and so on, and I know that a lot of this lease authorization that we're given is gonna still include further negotiations and other things with our city manager.
I don't think so.
Well, you don't think that there's gonna be a lot of anything?
I mean,
this is a lease. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I thought that they were gonna, when they're coming in, well, I guess I'm going further with when they come in more detail with the plans and so on. All I'm saying is that I'm looking forward to seeing a good project come out of this.
okay, and I should
And I did see put up
clarify
plans.
something. This is not a PUD, so
Right.
whatever plan they come in with
That's.
must meet code. So they would be coming in to have a permit issue. And so you guys have approved or would be approving what's in the lease right now as a site plan. And as long as they meet that site plan and it meets the permitting, it'll be, that's what's coming.
Okay, all I wanna say, I hope that, I'm thinking that it's gonna be a good project.
I just have I'm sorry.
Commissioner Matheson.
I mean, I want to be clear to my fellow commissioners. This is it. There's no second reading. This is
Yes.
approval and that's it. for negotiations, and that's why I'm a little hesitant. I know I personally had many conversations with Mr. Metakaitis. I've been happy discussing kind of my thoughts and his thoughts on the vision of this property. You know, I remember sitting here, as we all did, with a room full of people assuring them that this was going to be an ancillary use of the park, kids friendly, you know, an open, warm concept. We would not let it turn into an Outback or some other big chain restaurant. And I think Mr. Metakaitis has been good to deal with. Apprehensive for a few reasons. One, the appraisal agenda and package. The public hasn't seen this. Myself, and I believe the other commissioner. I feel like before we vote on this, that should be part of the package. We have public meetings for a reason. Two, this is our only shot. And when I last saw this, in my last conversation with Metakaitis, it was a lot more seemed to be an open air concept. And I first got on the phone and asked kind of what's under the pavilion. There are closed walls, there's going to be lots of windows in this open air field. Under air. I get that. But I felt strongly from the push to residents that they wanted this open air concept park. And I think there's a way, and I believe in what Mike's trying to do, that can work. But I'm wondering, we don't have any assurances on that with this plan. I'd like to see some plans that show a side view. I'm hoping in my mind that he's got thoughts of he said lots of windows, sliding doors that are open so that people can feel like they can walk from the park right into this restaurant. My hesitation is that this is our only shot. We don't really have those plans. We have no landscape plan. And I know Mike is on landscape, and I'd love to see it. But right now, I mean, I know these are kind of small things, but I'm bringing them up. So they're not. We're talking about a term of 30 years here, and we have some major stuff that seems to be agreed upon. I know I myself agree on the language in the appraisal and a lot of the big terms. But why I'm hesitant is some of this little stuff, when people are going to be walking down that boardwalk or walking from the park pavilion, they're going to notice it. And we don't have this guarantee or really that much detailed plan. And, you know, I think that's worth asking if we can get a little bit better plans before we give our only shot on it.
Commissioner Gladwin, did you have something?
Mike, can I respond to that?
Thank you, Mr. Vitale.
Mr. Vitale?
Sure. The lease agreement is negotiated so that there's a conceptual plan attached, but the tenant still has the obligation, and it would have to make the application with detailed plans and specifications within 60 days of the lease date. And the city then has the ability to review all of that and approve it or deny it. If the city, or tweak it. And if it's denied, I think the lease has a clause that the tenant can terminate the lease. So you still have the ability to do that review. In order to prepare those plans, you know, my client wanted to know whether he has a deal first before going, you know, he spent money and time on conceptual plans, but as you know, doing all the finalized drawings takes a lot more time and is more expensive. So that's why it was structured this way.
Yes, and
just one other comment too is that this is actually being structured as an assignment of the existing lease, and then an amended and restated lease agreement. So my client is stepping into the shoes of the current tenant, and then if you pass this tonight, it's acknowledging that and then essentially amending and restating the lease with the negotiated lease terms but you still have the right to approve all of the building permits and specifications.
City staff has approval, oversight, not commission. Is that correct?
It's based on code.
It's straight zoning.
Not architecture.
They would review the plan.
Right, but just to clarify, just want to make sure, this is not coming back for us to review in a public way. This is for staff, and yeah, what happened first.
That is correct, but I also want to state that Mr. Vitale is correct in that, any developer, anybody that comes in here is not going to spend thousands of dollars to put a plan together for you guys to
sure.
now.
I understand that, but it's gonna come back before staff for straight zoning. So all the walls of this, under this structure, could just meet code, it could be very solid. Whereas my takeaway from other discussions on the Pelican, and I believe it's what Mike is gonna, has a vision of too, would be some, for instance, say the wall viewing the river, or the two walls viewing the river feasibly could open with sliding doors up to 60%.
There's an eastern elevation.
There's an eastern elevation in Exhibit B, but it's very general.
Yeah, I mean, none of that is in there. We're not gonna have a chance to bring that up.
It is in there. It's in your packet.
Commissioner Glassley?
The elevation.
Commissioner Glassley has the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess just my personal sense of over-governing is kicking in. I certainly can understand why we want to know what the details are, but hearing what Mr. Vitale said, yes, this isn't going to come back before us, but it's not like they're going to sneak something in that's not going to abide by our code. We have a highly intelligent staff, the best staff around, and if we look at what Mr. Matakaitis has already done with some of his other restaurants in the city, they're beautiful buildings. And thinking as a business sense, sorry, it's not. Thinking from a business sense, there has to be a little bit of leeway and design choices he has to make in order for this to be, and not only beneficial for him, well, beneficial for us, but also beneficial for him to make money. I mean, you can look at all the money or you can imagine the amount of money that is going to go into this. So some of the things that I was concerned about in the beginning, the 30-year lease, that's something that I feel a little bit better now, knowing that he's putting a huge investment in this and he's going to need that time to recoup that money. So just knowing all this, I'm a lot more comfortable now than I ever was. And on top of that, we are in a completely different climate now than we were when this started. A completely different climate. And this, unfortunately, none of us know. This could be the climate going forward.
Mr. Bruner, did you have a comment?
Yes. I've been coming in here, I guess, 5.5, 6 years. Commissioners, or 2.5 in the audience, and nothing has been built. But I think of all the commercial property that's been built in our little city, but all I saw was this, which was fabulous. The Azula, I probably say it wrong, but and we have all these people that come before us, but nothing gets built. And all we've been talking about since I've been here, and I'm decades in all of Florida and any other state, is about how can people afford to find a place to live. And I've tried to do my best with different people and builders that come in here. And I sit here and think, he's come before us with this lease, with the economy falling down all before us. I would never take this gamble myself. But since he is, I really think it's a good deal. I think it's a good deal for him, and it's a good deal for us. We don't know what this economy is going to do right now. I mean, we can't even walk around, and know how many weeks will it be before we can.
How many weeks will it be before restaurants even open?
Yes.
Let's remember that.
Right.
And it's just, I want somebody to build them, and I'll just go ahead and talk while I'm talking. Mr. Blunt wants help and different people that come before us to get things built. We can't get any, seem to get anything built to help the people. I hope we can help him tonight or whoever comes before us. Anyway, Mr. Layton, I hope we can build these things cheaper. It's just that we want to help, but nobody, they're scared. Property is so expensive. It's just high to buy and to build. But anyway, it's a gamble, whatever people are doing today, and that's what I'm trying to say. It's a real gamble, and I would like to see him get that place. And the reason why is because of the idea of him not putting some big building down there, that he's making it family oriented and open and tropical and lots of plants. Told me the same thing, so he's told all of us, so I hope he gets the plants. I think he will. But anyway, that's it.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Can I ask Mr. Vitale and Mr. Martel? Maybe I didn't read it carefully, or probably it's covered somewhere, but between the default remedies and liability insurance, is there anything that needs to have a specific force majeure clause, or is it not appropriate in this type of a 30-year lease? Or
I believe
Be a situation where the landlord doesn't get money, so I wouldn't push for that. I mean, we can have whatever you want, but it doesn't help us.
Mike, I believe there's a standard force majeure clause in the contract.
I don't see it. I didn't see
There
that.
was language that in the event of a act of God or something earlier, I can probably find it.
I didn't see a title. When I saw the liabilities and the default remedies,
I know that Mr. Matakaitis wanted a coronavirus clause, and the city manager and I were unable to agree on that with him, just because it was so complicated as to, you know, what's the rent gonna be if they're half open? Does that mean they pay, you know, it just became very complicated. And we said, realistically, just like with everybody else, the city's gonna work with whoever their tenant is if there's another coronavirus problem and you run into this. Just simple as matter of factly, that's how the city is.
But in this lease, it specifically says that if the government closes this business, that we forgive the rent for the month every month that it's closed.
There's a prorated clause in
Right, and so that would qualify as a force
Corona,
majeure.
right.
okay.
That was a clause that we negotiated, but I believe there should also be a standard force majeure clause, unless I'm wrong. I remember, I'm looking through it now.
Well, I would just like to interject to say that this is, why are we rushing this? I don't understand why we have to be rushing this. We're not clear on whether this is standard boilerplate lease. Maybe it's got force majeure. I don't even know what that means. I feel like we're awfully rushing this a lot, and in a climate where we have no idea how long restaurants are going to be closed or the impact. And yes, while I want to see that, I want to see our workers get back to work. We're talking about, let's remember where this came from. It was promised by the dailies. We fought so hard and got dragged through the mud that we were going to have a business that remained small and charming and beachy. We talked about the beach and the sand ad nauseum. And now we've got something very different, which I'm not necessarily opposed to, but I don't think that it's right for us to be negotiating this lease for an entirely new business off of an assigned lease. This is a completely separate conversation, and we're effectively allowing Mr. Matakaitis to buy the dailies out of their lease and then turn around and he's not extending it. I'd be willing to have that conversation. Let's take it one step at a time. Does he want to buy the Pelican? Great, he can continue operating it. Does he want to do this? Great, let's have that conversation. We're jamming a lot into one 30-year lease that I feel like we could just take a little bit longer to let the public know, read through the appraisal, to have us sort out whether or not, I mean, when I read our FERDAP obligation, a walled-off section of a public park. How is that open to the public for easy access where there's a bar right there? I mean, that's really tricky gymnastics. I think we're doing our public a disservice, and we might, I don't know, I just think that we're really going way too fast here with something that we were kind of screwed with to begin with.
Well, just to respond to that, I believe my client's been negotiating with the dailies for how many months now, Mike? 4? 6 months. And actually, we've entered into 6 separate addendums to the purchase and sale agreement, extending the ability to close 5 different times, because this has gone back and forth so many times. And, doing our due diligence in determining whether we can go forward and build the building where we want to build it. And again, it's all subject to the permits and approvals being applied for and approved by the city. So it would be difficult for Mr. Matakaitis to ask for another extension at this point.
I appreciate that, and I don't want to hold you or your client hostage by any means, but let's remember what we're talking about here. The Dailies fought to sign an extended lease to continue the operation of the Pelican Cafe. We built a lot of protections into that and gave ourselves one out, which was to renegotiate the rent where there could be a new owner, but largely the vibe and the feel were contemplated in the lease and the exhibits. And now we're talking about selling that lease, transferring it to a new person, and having a completely new thing. That's going against the referendum that was put out to the public. I mean, it technically can be conceived that if it applies, but that's not in good faith. That's a bad thing.
Can I just say something? I'm just gonna, I agree with some of what you said, but I disagree with some of what you said as well.
Sure.
We've gone through 3 city managers.
Right.
Newly elected commissioners on this board with the Pelican. The Dailies put us in this situation, absolutely, yes. I agree that we shouldn't hold them hostage. The new people that are trying to work on it. It's almost like some sort of fresh start might be good, right? I know we had people here, they're saying, oh, they like the sand. It doesn't mean that they're not gonna like what, Mr. Matakaitis is gonna build. I just think what he's gonna, I've seen his other restaurants, and I think what he is gonna build is gonna be beautiful, and I think people are gonna go there, and a year and a half from now, 2 years from now, we're gonna look back on this and we're talking about beach sand, and I do believe it's still gonna have Florida charm, and I believe that our staff is going to make sure it's built to the code, and I don't know, I just don't feel like we are rushing it. How long has he been working with, how long have we been going through this? Just with Mr. Matakaitis? And then how long with the Dailies?
A year.
6 months with the Dailies.
The Dailies were definitely,
With us, it was longer than
it
that.
was almost
Yeah.
a year with the Dailies.
So if we would still be with the Dailies, we would be going on a year and a half, okay? 6 months with him. I feel like we have to make tough decisions. And as a board, when we don't want to make those tough decisions, we kick the can down the road.
But this is the first time it's come before the board in this form, and that's kind of the problem. And I think what the mayor's trying to say is 2 more weeks, one more meeting to have it solid, where some of this stuff is ironed out. I mean, I have no problem saying on record, I'm in agreement with the 30 years and the numbers, stuff like that. But there seems to be this rush right now.
But so let's state what those are, because you just can't say we're rushing it. Let's state what's going to happen in 2 weeks. What else do we want to see? Instead of just saying, well, I feel like we're rushing it. What is it we're rushing? Do you want the appraisal?
My top problem is the appraisal wasn't accessible to public. And frankly, my last conversation with Mr. Metakitis was a totally different conceptual site plan than this. And, you know, I know he needs the assurances of us before moving forward, but we keep going back to our city code. I know it's gonna meet city code, but this property is special because it's been debated for many years. And all this fine stuff about the sand, the accessibility to the public, the kid-friendly was in the Pelican lease. And that was all fought over. And now that's all tossed out.
Mike?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to say something as well.
Yes, Mr. Dias.
The commission approved a resolution for the assignment of this lease. It was staff's opinion that it would behoove the city to start fresh with a new lease to clean up some language in very old Pelican lease and get more modern language in the lease, which is why we're looking at this whole new lease. This is not a rush job. This is not, we're going too fast. This has been going on for well over probably 6+ months. Just because it's the first time you're seeing it, because it's a first item resolution, just like the last item was a first item resolution, doesn't mean we're going too fast. It's just you don't like what you're seeing. So it's not that staff is taking it too fast, it's you just don't like what you're seeing. As far as the appraisal not being in the agenda item, that's 100% my fault. I've had the appraisal for a couple of months. I accidentally did not attach it to the agenda item when the agenda went forward. It was emailed to all of you, and it's also being given to the clerk to be part of the record. The appraisal is what it is, and it actually shows beneficial to us, and we are following the appraisal 100% in this lease item. If you guys are unhappy with the outcome of what the design plan is, that's a different story. Let's focus on that. But I don't think that this is moving too fast at all. And as it relates to the carve out and the DEP, I don't even know if that section's in the FERDAC agreement down on that end. So, I mean, that's another thing that would have to be looked at. So we're putting the cart before the horse. You know, you have to get somewhere to get to the next step. If you guys aren't happy with this lease, or because of the language of the lease, that's one thing. If you're not happy with the design, that's another thing.
I want to clarify. I am basically happy with it, and I do like what I'm seeing. I guess wish that there was a little more information. Just knowing that the concept has evolved so much in my conversation with Mr. Metakitis, and knowing the history of what we dealt with the Pelican. But I do believe in Hudson's on the river and the vision. And, you know, I'm sorry, one of my largest hesitations, Mr. Manager, was the appraisal. But that'll be in the public record, and, you know, I want to see this happen.
Okay, Commissioner Bruner, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you. I read off of the appraisal, and I don't feel like I'm being rushed either. We've got lots of time. I want to say another thing. When you're building, I would think this would be the time, and I thought about this when I was talking with the manager. I think I brought it up. Now would be a good time to start building, with everything down. Now would be a good time to have all summer or whenever they get ready to start, have it ready by next year. So I'm okay with this, and I would like to make a motion to resolution number 49-2020.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion for approval by Commissioner Bruner and a second by Commissioner Glassblake. Well, I apologize if I offended staff. We're not accusing anybody of not doing their job. I am concerned about FERDAC. I'm also concerned about how much money is being paid to take those to buy the day lease out of their lease. That could have gone into this project. That's money that I believe are the taxpayers. I would like to negotiate with Metakitis completely unencumbered and being clear, but here we go. Ms. Kendall, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Glassman? Yes. Commissioner Matheson?
Yes.
Commissioner Bruner?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Clark?
Yes.
Mayor Meyer?
No. Carries with the mayor abstaining, or voting no. Okay, moving on to item number 14, Charter Review Board final report. Mr. Mortel?
Yeah, they'll get a lot of agenda items. Hold up, hold on. Sorry. This is resolution 52-2020, resolution of the City Commission of the City of Stuart, Florida, accepting the final report of the Charter Review Board and direct staff on final charter amendments, providing for an effective date and for other purposes. I think I'm also going to be one.
Yes, I think you're the, or well, I have Mr. Dias as the preparer.
Yes, sir. So you'll find the charter finding on there, and the resolution is to accept the charter board's final report. In the agenda item itself and in the resolution, you'll see that the charter board boiled down to 3 items that they are recommending for a charter change on. All of the rest of the items that you can read in the final report that were discussed came down to recommendations that those be changed in our Code of Ordinances, which would be in sections 1 and 2 of the Administrative Code of Ordinances, which we will bring back to you at future dates. But as far as the charter referendum, you'll see in your agenda item change A, change B, and change C. I'd like to discuss each of those items individually and whether or not the commission would like to see each of those charter items listed for a referendum. And if agreed upon and whatever you guys decide in this discussion, Mr. Mortel will bring back the actual referendum language at a future of the next meeting for you guys to approve the actual language for the charter referendum item.
Thank you, Mr. Dias. Okay, we'll begin with the change A.
So change A is the board had multiple discussions regarding commissioner pay. The charter board settled on the following concept. Outside a general wage increase or cost of living increase afforded to all city employees, the commission must wait until their next election cycle to receive any pay increase. There is currently in section 2 of our administrative code states that commissioners will receive pay increases with the adopted budget, and that's in the regular administrative code by ordinance. But there was some inquiry to the board to examine how commissioners are paid and to see if there was any desire to add any language to the charter. This was a heavily discussed item. Most of the charter board, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Mortel, were not really in favor of necessarily having too specific of stuff in the charter because it is more of a guiding document. And so they didn't want to really get too much of the nuts and bolts in the charter, but there was some push back and forth on this item, and that's kind of what we settled on.
If I could mention just, there's a kind of a dynamic that took place, at least with the charter as well. And it's the intention of the language, and then when applied to the balance of the information, because later in this discussion, we're going to talk about changing terms to prospectively 4-year terms. So in the event that a commissioner were to receive a 4-year term, and he got elected, or he or she got elected on November 1st, let's say, and then they got elected on August 7th, and then let's say September 1st, a new budget was adopted for pay raises, does that mean no one gets a pay raise until that commissioner that just got elected 2 weeks ago faces election again in 4 years? Or does that mean that whoever was up for election next year or the year after goes ahead and gets their raise, but this person has to wait 4 years to be raised? And then lastly, there was the discussion of if it happened in the budget cycle, like the issue with the raises occurred, and then there was a general election a month later, which there was, does that satisfy this clause? And therefore everybody gets a raise that very year because there is a general election that year. So it's not
you really helped pull out all of that. Which direct. I appreciate it. Yeah, no, that's good. We got to figure all this stuff out.
Right. So the intention of the board, the charter board, was they felt like what they said, that, and there was a lot of discussion, not just one meeting, I think 3 different meetings this came up. They felt like the commission must wait until their next election cycle to receive any pay increase. So I think it kind of got bifurcated. So groups 1, 3, and 5 would get a pay increase on their election cycle. Groups 2 and 4 would get an election on their cycle based on this proposal. This board, though, is who has to make that ultimate decision and who has to decide what referendum language, if any, you want us to come back with the general public. This is a very complicated one to put as a referendum, and that's why I brought it up.
Well, and so before we really dig in, your point about the potential other edits we might make, or that might be voted in the referendum. If we were to go to 4-year terms, I'm sure we would probably consolidate with the general election. It would need to do it in the primary, right?
Well,
I guess because
potentially not.
Non-partisan rights.
But you would still, it would change the issue of what you mean by facing another election. Is it every 2 years now, or is it waiting until someone's 4-year term is up?
Right.
Because the other side that happened with that is there's term limits. So there could also be someone on the board that never actually got to have another election because they're going to term out before the election is struck.
Well, let's dig in.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'll be honest, I caused some of this problem that we're discussing right now, at least for change A and B. I was as vocal on it in my campaign for this seat, my service. My original discussion and thought of this and my submittal to the board was very similar to change A as it was written. I believe I also had, I wanted the board to decide that any raise in excess of either CPI, merit-based, or cost of living, and my original proposal was that it would show up as a referendum item on the next regularly scheduled election. Thus, basically taking the thought that we right now as a commission are currently being paid market value. Anything that our City of Stewart employees get, cost of living increase, one of us would have to make a motion for to receive that, or a CPI increase. Anything more than that, we should have to submit that on a referendum to the voters. The goal behind this was to throw off any drastic changes in our pay rate, but to keep our pay raise or keep the ability to have us remain at market rate pay. So there wouldn't be any kind of large discussions or questionable discussions that happened a couple of years ago. I will acquiesce, or I understand that the board didn't seem to want it to go to referendum. And I'd like to hear my fellow commissioners' thoughts on that changes. They seem to want it to just be pushed off on election cycle. That's the history.
And I don't know that the board felt they would do the referendum. They just decided that it'll never happen. No one would ever vote to give it the raise. They just knew that there would never be a referendum.
Commissioner, just to clarify, your suggestion was that the voters would approve by a referendum each time the commission voted to authorize a salary increase besides COLA.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, you can do whatever you want. This is the charter board.
That's the history of what I submitted.
I think that's too much
to the board. I just wanted you guys to know who caused this discussion problem.
Also, when you reference COLA increases, the city very, very rarely does a COLA increase. They converted a couple years ago to a merit pay, and it may be based upon a COLA number, but it's based upon merit. So the commission wouldn't qualify for a merit unless it was defined as a COLA. And it's complicated. I'm just making sure that we're clear when we leave here. What
there are ways you can tie it, just tying it to CPI.
Right, I just want you to tell us what it is.
Tied to market rate. You know, and anything above that, there would be, the intention was some other check besides just a motion from the commission to have that approved. Whether the check is one election cycle of waiting or a referendum from the voters.
Okay, I remember when the last raise came in, I think it came in right before Commissioner Bruner came on the commission, and I think if we're talking about reality, I I think she got the benefit of that when she came on, so that would be different from what they're talking about going forward. I think when that came up, Kelly and I had been on the commission quite some time. And I think that maybe because of just history and the way things are, and people just want to do service, but you still need to get compensated for the service that you do. But the fact was that we hadn't, I think when we had talked to our previous city manager, it had been 11 years or something since there was anything. And commissioners just don't want to get up every day and come up here on this dais and say, we want to raise our pay and we want to do this and we want to do that. So I don't know if a better measure for the charter committee could have been to set some kind of a rate, a recurring time when we reevaluate the commission pay scale or something, like say every 4 years or every something, or whatever it is.
That happens every budget.
I know, but you know.
That's what they discussed. And they discussed.
Well, we're gonna do it every year, so I think at a minimum of every X, the commission salary should be reevaluated and implemented, whatever is implemented at the time. I don't think that every year we're going to upgrade our salary. You know, it took us 11 years to make that change, and then it looked like it was like a double or more addition, although it was, I think, from 11,000 to, yeah, how much? 55. Yeah. Yeah, so, well, you know, just people, I'm saying what people's perceptions, people's perceptions are. So, maybe it should be some other guideline. I mean, this is it, we're discussing it now.
Well, Vice Mayor, I hear what you're saying, and I understand, but I think, you know, even if we were to say, to Mr. Mortel's point, every year we get a shot at it, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we were to say every 4 years, every 2 years, it's like an agenda thing, a commissioner would still have to make a motion to give themselves an increase, which, you know, that's the hard part, right? That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And so I guess this is a way to kind of provide some assurance to the public that if we were to vote for a salary increase, we don't benefit from it right snap then, we would have to survive the next election. And I think for St. Lucie in their latest controversial pay increase vote, that was built in, that it took effect in the next election cycle.
And to the point that, I mean, this in theory would try and prevent a 55% pay increase. Because each year you could adjust, I mean, we're all in agreement that we're making should be market rate.
$2 an hour.
But we all signed up for the job, we're in agreement that if this is market rate and just by the CPI, then a few years from now, I mean, when we talk about a lease, we're talking about adjusting the lease payments by CPI to keep it at market rate, so that we won't have to go and ask the voters for a 55% pay. But if we do, we present our facts in the referendum, and then maybe that time comes 10 years down the line, and we say that, you know, the commission hasn't had a rate, and be on the ballot. I mean, it would be made in the motion that we haven't had a raise in 10 years. So there'd be an extra check.
I'd like to hear from our wiser, no offense, Commissioner, I'd like to hear from some of our wiser board members who have gone through this. Commissioner Gosselin?
So here's the way I feel about it. I feel, looking back, I feel like we didn't do anything wrong. I don't. The reality is the people still have to say. We did it at the appropriate time, which was the budget meeting. We went through multiple budget meetings when we approved it. I imagine if there was 5 people, just 5 or 3, just 3 people that came up and had an issue with it and came out and vehemently said no, or respectfully said no, or, you know, said, wait a minute, going from, you know, going this much more you need to take a step back, I think we would have. But the reality is nobody came out and we went through the exact procedures that we were supposed to do. If there were people legitimately upset about it, they could have voted you and I out of office. They could have voted me out of the office. They could have voted any of us out of office. That is the reality of this job, is that we're determined on how well we're doing if we get to stay. Every day is a privilege to come and serve the residents of Stuart. If they don't think we're doing a good job, then they can vote us out of office. I certainly understand where your concern was when you were campaigning, because there was a lot, my opinion, a lot made out of this. Newspaper got on, grabbed hold of it, and I understand where you're coming from. But I'm not sure about doing a referendum. Referendums cost money. I feel like if we talk about it in our budget and we openly talk about it, and this board talks about everything more than any board has that I've sat on in the last, I mean, we talk about everything. I'm just not sure, I don't feel like it's broken. So I'm not sure what we're trying to fix. That's just me. I don't feel like it's broken. When all this happened, trust me, I spoke to a lot of city residents. One of them sitting right here, Helen McBride. I never once, no, not one person came up to me and said, whoa, you're getting paid way too much money. For the amount, they still, no one has ever come up and said, well, you're getting paid way too much money for what you do. At the end of the day, if people have a problem with us, they can run against us and we won't have the privilege to serve the citizens any longer. So those are my words of wisdom.
Mayor, I remember what Helen said too.
Commissioner?
She said he hadn't had a raise in 11 years, and she didn't have a problem with it. She's the only one who came forward and told us that.
It was also discussed, just for the record, that if it was really intended to be deceptive, the better way would have been to bury it in the budget before the budget cycle and just approve the budget. But the fact was, you guys actually addressed it after the fact, brought it up and had a public discussion on it, so that it wasn't a hidden matter. It actually had more attention than most of the other budget items.
And there was transparency. There's a lot of, there was a lot of, never mind.
But the matter before you, though, is that the board recommended, in the event that the commissioner board were to give itself a pay raise other than COLA, that would be done, not by referendum, but that they would need to wait until after they faced an election.
Right.
To receive the benefit of that raise.
Vice Mayor?
But you're saying that we don't get COLA per se, even when we put that number in the budget. When we put that number in the budget, it covers certain.
We haven't put a COLA or GWI in the budget in probably 9-10 years. When we had the recession, back prior to the recession, we were doing COLAs and merit together. But since the recession, we've eased back in. We're just now getting back to merit over the last couple of years. I mean, we were doing lump sum bonuses, which depending on what happens with this, who knows what will happen with the COVID situation. But
well, Mr. Mayor,
Okay, that's just the first item.
Well, and we can also discuss, where you see where it mentions section 2, the commission doesn't have to have this be a referendum item. You could decide and give staff direction that you want the code to have this language in section 2 without a referendum. You can do it at any time, directing that in the event a commissioner were to get a raise, it has to go, it doesn't become effective until after an election.
well, the difference between a referendum and changing the code is
3 votes.
A referendum and 3 votes and 2 readings. And that's where I believe something this significant should be. And if we're doing a referendum for the charter review, we're putting it on the ballot. I mean, discussing the cost of doing a referendum for something as significant as 10 years, I think is worthwhile. I mean, I'll make a motion to approve change A as written and as suggested by our advisory board, adding, as city manager pointed out, adding CPI
So including CPI?
CPI would require a referendum?
Commission pay raises over CPI, comma, or COLA.
Oh, right.
No. We base the COLA or the GWI. It may not be based on CPI, depending on what our budgetary constraints are that particular year. So let's say CPI comes in out of the Miami metro area, it comes in at 4%, but we can only afford 2. I mean, you don't want to, you just want to say COLA or GWI. You don't want to tie CPI.
The general public doesn't, I would say, COLA is more of a city term.
No, cost of living.
All right, yeah. All right, then we'll leave the language as it is. If you're tying it to CPI, doesn't seem appropriate.
Well, staff would still be bringing language back for our review. This is just, I guess, just correct, be giving direction.
For clarification purposes for me, who's going to have to be forced to grab some of this language, what does it mean to wait until your next election cycle?
Is it commission or the individual commissioners?
I take away the next, the recommendation was the same way Port St. Lucie, the individual commissioner.
I don't know that that's what Port St. Lucie was doing. Honestly, I haven't seen the language. I know that they said waiting until after the next election. But
Whose recommendation from Port St.
they didn't do it yet.
Someone in the charter recommended we do it like Port St. Lucie?
No,
someone on the chart.
Port St. Lucie is also addressing a raise for their commission. The mayor brought up a substantial raise, but he said it was wanted to go into effect after the next election.
I believe it was voted, just a standard order of business. It wasn't a charter discussion. It was just a commissioner authorized salary increase. I think it was last year.
But I don't know if they adopted it or not.
Yes, they adopted it, and now they're waiting for the election cycle.
Right.
Okay, well, we'll look at that, but can I ask, Commissioner Matheson? Okay, so you're interested in this area. You said you brought it up during your campaign. What is it that you really want to see work in reality? With regard to this?
Some sort of structure to avoid a 55% pay increase by commissioner. I see both sides.
Not that part, the election cycle part. I know that the money part is. Okay, well, go on.
Well, in my mind, then each commissioner serving on the board would have to go through an election before their pay raise was granted to be evened out. That's the way I read the recommendation by the charter. So they're staggering terms, so there would be times if the commission did give a pay raise over COLA, that pay raise, the commissioners, the groups might be getting paid different salaries until the second group went through their own election cycle.
By the way, I just pulled up the Port St. Lucie one, and it says the raise will not take effect until the November 2020 election, when a new council is seated. So it's not for each person. It is a single election. So in this particular case, just so we're clear, if you in August or in July did a budget item, and you adopted the budget item for, or I guess it's in August, you do it after the election. So it would be the following election for all 4.
Across the
or
board.
5, right?
Across the board.
Is that, or is it each individual has to face election?
I think that was his intent.
Right, and I don't know. That's why I'm asking, because if I have to draft it, I want to make sure I can back the language.
But I agree with the other thing.
Because I think Commissioner Matheson's was each individual commissioner had to let the voters decide whether they should get that raise.
And let's talk about the reality. Commissioner Bruner, you came in when?
She voted on the raise.
It was her first vote.
Yeah, and you came in, yeah. So, and then we had the new people. We just had the pleasure of having a lot of changes all coming in very fast at the time. But, so Mr. Matheson, what you're saying that in an instance like that, when a new commissioner came in, if we had made a change, which we were bringing it up to standard, we had done a survey of other communities, we'd gone through a whole bunch of things like Commissioner Glassman brought up. If that had happened at the time, and we had a new incoming commissioner, that commissioner would have had to serve a year, or would they have to serve 2 years until their next election cycle?
No, Vice Mayor, every commissioner would have had to have their pay raise that they voted on approved by the public, by the voter, by going through one election cycle.
Can I say something?
So, yes,
I just wanted to add, when I think about elections and they go into vote and they don't know a thing about the commissioners or how many years they've been there, and they see where they're gonna give us a raise, most of the time they're probably just gonna say, no, I'm not gonna give you a raise. I just, I'm fearful of it.
Well, I agree, that's
But
why.
sometimes you do need it, and you burned it, and it's not a whole lot of money.
so I have a motion on the floor.
Just to be clear, the motion was for change A, not Commissioner Bruner, what you were speaking of, that it would go to the referendum. The motion, change A as written with the clarification that everyone would have to sit through their own election cycle before becoming effective for that person.
Right. I think the confusing part was when you would say surviving, or, you know, that the public would vote, meaning it's not a referendum, it is a surviving election. Okay, I have a motion. Commissioner's motion dies for lack of second. Are there any other discussion points regarding pay and change pay? Seeing none, we'll move on to change B. Qualification for office. The board feels the following changes should be addressed to the qualifications for office of city commissioner. Term for each group shall be 4 years with a maximum of 8 consecutive years, regardless of which group. The charter board recommended that this be one referendum question and not 2 individual referendums.
So how would that work, Mike, for like, because
Well,
they're all different.
you know, so just, you know, there's additional background on this, but it would become effective, if you guys pass this ordinance this year, it would become effective in January, if it passed, this referendum language passed this year, it would become effective January 1st, 2021. So all 5 groups would have 8 years, starting in January 2021.
Fresh clock.
Right, so January 2021 moving forward would be 8 years. Now, those folks that were up for election this year will be serving a 2-year term from 20 to 22. Those people that face election next October, if it was now changed, would run for a 3-year term because they would to stagger it out right. And that comes back in the next language, and that's a discussion for another day. But it resets. Nobody's got any time prior to January of 2021. And that's a discussion, but the nuance to it is what we'll discuss next time, if you approve this.
But then what is it that we're approving? Don't know what the language.
It's an 8-year term limit with 4-year terms. So starting next year, commission terms, no one would serve more than 8 years in a row, where they would term out. And in addition to that, instead of having an election every year, the city would have an election every 2 years, because groups 1, 3, and 5 would be 2 years, and then just like the county commission, it would follow exactly like the county commissions.
Yes.
So they'd be 4-year terms.
Yes, Vice Mayor.
Since I didn't, you're right, I didn't see any language, and I saw the other report from the chairman of the charter committee. But I saw in that, when they talked about the boards, which is going to be another discussion, that if somebody got off of a board for a year, then they could go back for another 8-year term.
That would be the
But I
same.
didn't see that for the city commission.
It is, because it says consecutive.
Did I see it for the city commission?
Well,
That you can, if you got off of the board for some time, then you can go back and run again on the city commission.
Well, you haven't adopted the language, but it says the term of each group shall be for 4 years with a maximum of 8
I
consecutive
saw that,
years.
the consecutive years.
So if you took a year off, you'd have an additional 8 consecutive years.
I know.
That's-
And that's implied. I'm saying that on the board, when they talked about the board members like the LPA, they actually said there was some proposal in there somewhere, I thought.
Okay, yeah.
It said that
I
if
think
you
they
had
said
a
it
year
here
off
too.
or something.
They discussed it here too, that was the same thought process.
Okay,
Okay.
well, Commissioner Bruner, I'm sorry. You had a question?
Yes, trying to remember. Oh, how many, the Port St. Lucie, how many years do they get reelected? 2 or 4? Because we were talking about
I'm gonna say
the
it's
money
4.
funds, I was thinking of that.
I think they're 4, but I have no idea, to be honest with you. I know the county commissioner are 4.
Right.
Well, I'll say that, I mean, I've learned it is terribly difficult to learn on the job, get big things you want done, try to work with staff and with the people out there and the public to get on board with your ideas and to try to build the framework, and then all of a sudden you feel this pressure to campaign again.
And I should mention, the city runs into a cost, because in the odd years, historically, the county doesn't have an election. The city has to pay for it and doesn't get the benefit of the supervisor of elections. And the city has to pay for the election, whereas if we staggered it to 4-year terms and put it with the supervisor of elections, then all the election ballots, all the booths, and everything are already manned, and all you're paying for is adding one more question to the ballot, rather than putting the booths out and manning all the booths and doing all the stuff.
That was kind of my
I wanted to,
biggest push on this.
as I was looking at that, I was thinking, well, I'm not gonna be around 8 years if I get reelected. I'm only a certain age, it just goes so much, but anyway, there's just so much to this and to think about it. And I do like the idea of term limits, but I don't know about the closeness here with the city. Now you have to learn, I don't know.
Looks like Commissioner Glass-Leaton.
I agree with the 4-year term. I think that makes a lot of sense. It's difficult figuring everything out, especially when you're new, like I said, and then 16 months flies by and all of a sudden you're up for re-election and campaigning. And more importantly, the cost to the city for special elections. So it definitely, it would benefit everyone for us to serve 4-year terms. Regarding the term limits, I am a proponent of term limits. I'm just not sure about 8 years for this position only. The simple reason that if you look at some of the people that have been here who have made impacts to the city, they probably wouldn't have, or maybe they would have, I don't know. They served longer than 8 years. And I think there's something to be said for some consistency and getting to know the person, and that may take longer than 8 years.
Staff recommended 12 years to the charter when they brought this issue up. And they had a probably hour-and-a-half long debate, and they said 8. And again, it's your discretion, like I said, or just so you know, we did bring that up in great detail. And they said the problem with 12 is that 12 will actually go past the next charter amendment.
But I think what's different is people can get voted out of office. And I know that's hasn't happened a lot here, but it still can happen.
And I don't disagree with you. The charter was made up of a very diverse group, and they felt like incumbents don't get voted out of office.
Well, it's gonna, with the 8 years, we're gonna see a fast track. I mean, I've been here 10 years, you were on there 10 years,
I'll tell you
a lot of
another-
people are, and we'll see a lot of changes in the city, and
I'll tell you this too, they discussed, because when I brought it back as 2 separate questions. One, let the voters decide whether it should be a 4-year term, and the other, let them decide if there should be 8-year term limits. And the board said they were concerned about that because they felt like the general public would just vote no to the 4-year term, because that's how they voted the last 2 times the city tried to switch to 4-year terms without it being booked with something else. So the board's theory on it was, okay, well, if you give the public the knowledge that it's a maximum of 8 years, the 4-year term is more likely to get a supporting vote. I don't know if I don't have any political science there. I'm just telling you what the board said. I don't know if that's accurate or not.
Mr. Mortel, when was it not voted through in referendum?
In 2000.
I mean, when's the last?
2006 or 2005, 2006 or 2008. I know that it came up, and I know it came up in 2011.
Last term, except for the last.
And so I know in 2000, and one of the times that it had voted no, the irony was that the three people that were up for election, no one on the city commission had ever served less than 4 years. And in fact, with the exception of Nick Blunt, who was appointed and didn't really run, I don't know that we have an example of a single city commissioner that ever served less than 2 terms. So the 4-year term isn't any magic here. I mean, it is every single commissioner on the wall has got 4 years, and that part's easy. The question is the term limit.
Mr. Mayor, so I kind of made this a suggestion when I submitted this charter report. And my original suggestion was 12 years and was 4-year terms to be tied together, because I feel like I'm a proponent of term limits. I do understand that 8 years may be too tight. And even then the question might have to come up, what if someone serves a half a term? I mean, there's nuances in the language. That the reason behind the 4 years, if you want a referendum to pass, though, it might be more appetizing tied to term limits. But 4 years has a potential of increasing the voter turnout, democratic process, and significantly having a chance of saving the city money on having to fund its own election. But I had originally envisioned 12 years, seeing how long it does take to learn. But just so everyone knows, if you throw out 8 years, the last thing I would want to do is dissuade any future resident from wanting to serve half a term. And we have seen that in the past few years and stuff where someone steps down. I don't want to see someone serve 1 year of a section of a term, then serve 1 4-more-year term. I want to encourage residents to serve. So if it's structured like the U.S. presidency, where the vice president might serve 2 years, if the president dies or steps down, he's still eligible to serve 2 8-year terms. Or the language could be structured that it's 12 years maximum. There's a lot of ways that it could be done, but I am a fan of term limits, and I feel like if we want to switch to 4-year terms to side up with the county, the general public might agree with term limits.
So I definitely could get behind 12. I can't get behind 8, but I certainly could wrap my head around a term limit of 12 years. I think that's enough time to understand how it works. And just to Vice Mayor's point, at 8, I mean, think about it.
The
Five.
board did it because it was, that's what the state of Florida had done. Say that.
Do we have to have a referendum to do the 4? Or do we?
Yes.
We have to.
It's in the charter, so we have to.
Any changes we make?
I think that the public would go along with if we put it together, the public would go along with, because they don't like term limits no more than the next person. So, yeah, 4 years and 3 terms, yeah. I can do it.
Well, I'll make a motion. All right, to approve change B, substituting the 8 to 12.
That's your earlier point.
Do we have to have the language
I
starting?
know that's it. That's right.
Okay.
I'll read that. We have an entire agenda item that I remake the actual language with the history background on it in May, that you guys will address that.
Beg your pardon, Commissioner, continue.
That's it, substituting that 8 years to 12-year terms.
I'll second.
May I request, Commissioner, clarify, you had mentioned earlier specifying the number of years versus terms. So if someone were to take over halfway through as an appointed commissioner, you want to say full 3 terms or just leave it at 12?
Well, I'll bring it back at 12 years.
Okay.
And then you guys can adjust that at the next hearing.
I have a motion from Commissioner Matheson and a second by Commissioner Glass-Layton to adopt change B, changing maximum of 8 years to maximum of 12 consecutive years, right? You can consecutive. Discussion on board? Seeing none, Ms. Kendall, please call the roll for change B.
Commissioner Bruner?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Clark? Yes. Commissioner Glass Leghton? Yes. Commissioner Matheson?
Yes.
Mayor Meyer?
Yes. Motion carries unanimously. All right, moving on to change C. Well, I mean, before, is there anything else regarding terms and term limits that we want to bring up? Okay. Moving on to item, or to change C for qualification for office, section 7.3. Mr. Mortelli, speak briefly describe.
This was the board felt qualifications for office need to be changed a little bit. And they added the language of if a city commissioner opens a treasury account for the purposes of accepting donations to run for an office other than the current city commission, or any commissioner who registers to run for a different office, they shall no longer be qualified to serve. Either of those actions shall be deemed as a resignation by the commissioner effective immediately. Essentially, the discussion was mentioned about Commissioner Glass Leghton running for property appraiser and Commissioner Tony Donald historically ran for county commissioner while serving as commission. And they didn't say anybody did anything wrong, and there was no inference or anything. They just said that they felt like it would be easier and that there would be nobody, making any innuendo about it one way or the other if in fact this language was included. And they felt very strongly about it. The city manager was present. They, again, felt very strongly that it should be included. I know that there's Ellen McBride, who's on the committee, is present, looking for any input from a committee member. I think Tom Penny may be on Zoom as well, who is also.
Anybody have any additional comments?
I agree with the concept. It seems certainly reasonable.
Commissioner Bruner?
I don't know, I'll go with it. Yeah. I'll go on there.
Mr. Martell?
Yes, ma'am.
So, yeah, it has, I guess in reality, it just created some issues in the past, I think. The whole thing about effective immediately, that throws us into whether or not the commission at the present, when that happens, will be finding a way to substitute it. I know that there was something in there, whether or not it's so far, then you either wait for a new election, or you could find somebody to go into the spot for a short time. Or maybe by the time that person is being, well, between the time that, like we have now, we have a situation
The
now.
current code simply says that the commission has the right to appoint and/or elect the replacement of a vacancy, but they must do it within 120 days of the vacancy. There is state code as it relates to like county commissioners where it says in the event that there's more than 50% of the term is left, the governor, I'm going to go backwards, less than 50%, the governor appoints. But the governor doesn't appoint city commission seats.
No.
So if you were to go down that path, you'd say the city commission appoints. But then the city commission could turn around and vote to have a special election. So then you get right back into why it says what it says. You don't have a person to appoint.
I kind of felt that way too, as I was reading this and thinking this, because when I had suggested a gentleman, Mr. Hunt, to come forward, I had talked about this, and I didn't want to see it just go on. And it wasn't, and my thoughts were what several people told me, not everyone comes forward to run. And we've got someone great and wonderful, and let's put them on, let's go. And that was my way of thinking and my attitude, because, not attitude, 120 days, and I thought about, what was it like 20 years ago? When's the last time they changed this? Has it been like this 20, 30, 40 years? I bet there wasn't very many people that could come forward, or that did come forward, and that's where I got that. I thought that we should, and we were going through hell, we were going through a lot then, and I want us to go forward and have some good people and get past losing what our manager did.
And that's, I'll make a motion to approve change C as written. It's not changing our code on what we do if there's a vacancy. We have 120 days to decide to fill it or hold a special election.
And that doesn't have anything to do with that. This is the creation of the vacancy.
All right. We have a motion.
Second.
Is there a second? Okay. And a motion by Commissioner Matheson and a second by Commissioner Bruner to accept change C as presented by staff regarding qualifications for office. Any further discussion before I call for a vote? Seeing none.
Can I just quick, is there gonna be more clarification on effective resignation when you bring it back, or is it?
Absolutely, and there will be, because you guys are gonna have to put what I call legislative intent into the thing and the whereas and all the stuff. So let's say, for example, in your particular situation, I don't know when you opened up an account or when you said you were running for office, but for the sake of conversation, let's say that it was March 1st. So if on March 1st, you knew that this regulation wasn't in play, or was in place, you might not have opened up a treasury account. You might have just waited till May. And that would be your discretion, and that would be fine. But at such, the board said, at such time as you opened it, then you're essentially resigning from the city commission. So you would plan accordingly. The real question becomes, okay, so what happens if you were to open up a treasury account but no one knew about it for a couple of election or meeting cycles? Well, obviously, if it was so private that no one knew about it, then it probably wasn't that effective anyway.
Well, can I just make a suggestion, just having gone through all this? If you could look at maybe, in addition to the treasury account, actually filling out the paperwork.
Announcement paperwork.
Yeah, like.
Right, well, we put it was both. It said if a commissioner opens a treasury account for purposes of accepting donations to run for office other than their current seat, or registers to run for a different
Oh,
office.
okay, I didn't.
So it's both, because that's what they had that discussion, because both, some people register but don't open the treasury. And then they said, well, what about
There's
somebody?
different guidelines
Right,
depending on what office.
Right. And you're not supposed to start a treasury until you settle your Form 1 anyway.
No,
No, not true.
it's different.
Yeah.
It's
There's all
guidelines.
sorts of different.
Different.
But thank you. Commissioner.
Question, if you were funding your own campaign, to Commissioner Layton's point, you could fund it with your own private money and not open a treasury.
No, that's not true.
You still have to do reporting.
You have to, regardless if you're funding it, self-funding it or not, you still have to have a bank account, a treasury account, and the name of your candidacy.
The treasury account would tie it to having.
But it depends. You can file for a seat and not have to open a campaign account, or you have to open a campaign account first and then file. As long as they're both in there, then that's the direction you want to go in, and they both need to be.
Right.
Any further discussion? We have a motion on the floor, Vice Mayor. Ms. Kendall, will you call the roll, please, for Commissioner Matheson's motion?
Commissioner Glass Layton? Yes. Commissioner Bruner?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Matheson?
Yes.
Mayor Meyer?
Yes. Motion carries unanimously. Vice Mayor, did you say something about?
Are we gonna talk about A again, or do we have to,
I had asked if there was any other.
does it need to be in that?
Well, it died, so unless you get a motion. It died, so unless you get a motion.
So we move on unless.
Mr.
There is no, I'm not bringing A back.
No.
There is no A.
Mr. Mayor, we need a motion to pass resolution 52-2020, the actual resolution accepting change B and C as previously voted.
I'll move approval on that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second. Okay.
I have an motion for approval, approving resolution 52-2020, bringing back B and C by Commissioner Glass Layton and a second by Vice Mayor Clark. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Kendall, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Matheson?
Yes.
Commissioner Glassman? Yes. Commissioner Bruner?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Clark?
Yes, does B say 12 years?
Yes.
My motion was 12 years.
Mayor Meyer?
Yes, and thank you for the clarification. I guess the motion is intended to say to change the B and C as were
And even if I brought it back at 8, you guys could change the language to 12 at the adoption.
adopting the motions that were made regarding B and C. Okay, well, moving on to item number 15, special election group 4. Mr. Mortel, reading the resolution into the record.
Yes, sir. This is resolution 50-2020, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Stuart, Florida, authorizing the notice of a special election to be held for a vacant City Commission seat, Group 4, requesting that the Supervisor of Elections perform certain election services in connection with said election, authorizing the City Manager to reimburse the Supervisor of Elections for costs of service rendered, setting the election to coincide with the regular election of the City Commission, providing for an effective date and for other purposes. As you know, the city received a resignation from Commissioner Glass Layton, which will create a vacancy for Group 4 effective May 27th or 28th. I think 27th was her last day, so the 28th will be the vacancy. Pursuant to code, the commission has 120 days to fill that seat. By holding the election at the general election that we normally do for the other seats in this term, it will fall within the time frame and will have no cost to the city because it's just one more ballot line on the ballot that the clerk can provide to the Supervisor of Elections.
I'll move approval.
I figured you should have the honor.
Second.
I have a motion for approval by Commissioner Glass Layton and a second by Vice Mayor Clark. Any discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Kendall, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Matheson?
Yes.
Commissioner Glassman?
Yes.
Commissioner Bruner?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Clark?
Yes.
Mayor Meyer?
Yes.
May-
Motion carried unanimously. Yes, Vice
Mayor, can
Mayor.
I go back to item number 14, the charter review? Yeah, it's not gonna hurt anything. I forgot when I was gonna try to either make a motion or say something to most profusely thank the members of the charter committee, and if we could send them a letter or something from the mayor to thank them for their service on the charter review committee.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Ms. Kendall is taking care of it. Go ahead.
We have sent them a thank you letter, and at an upcoming commission meeting, once things settle down and more public can be invited, we do plan to recognize them.
Yes.
Oh, very good.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
I also want to say that during those conversations, when stuff was being batted around, those 11 board members do place a lot of faith in their elected officials. So when we were talking about charter changes, they were not necessarily in favor of making a bunch of changes to the charter. They believed in what you guys do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your grace. Much appreciated to remind us. Yes, and thank you to the board. Okay, moving on to item number 16 has been continued.
Well, we would need it to be continued to a date certain.
Move approval of item 16 to May 16th?
May 11th.
May 11th.
Oh.
I have a motion to continue to 11. Second, I have a motion by Commissioner Glass Layton to continue item number 16 to May 11th, date certain, and a second by Commissioner Matheson. Well, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries with Vice Mayor Clark not responding out of the chamber. Let's move on to item number 17 is D&D for option for the lease of the C1 Penny Creek commercial property at 1001 Northwest Federal Highway.
Good evening, Mayor and Commission. Kevin Freeman, Development Director for the Redwood. Just a real, hopefully, quick discussion regarding the Henry Creek project. It's a property which is north on US 1. First of all, I'm going to give you a bit of history of the reason for coming to you tonight and to help you hopefully make a decision on some of the options that we're going to bring forward to you. So So this property originates from an effort by both the city and the county in around the period after the recession, around 2010, 2011, to partner to purchase 50 acres, which was put into preservation for Hayden Creek. As part of that, subsequently, there was a deal made between the city and the county to exchange a flag lot to enable the creation of a almost 2 acre lot on US 1. And the reason for doing that would be to hopefully, and the intent of the commission at that time, to provide a revenue source for the upkeep and maintenance of the Hayden Creek project, but also not only that project, but for other city-owned lands that could benefit from the revenue source. So from 2011 onwards, there were various efforts made to market this property. 2013, there was a move made to put in place planned unit development that would almost have a rotified site plan available. So providing it met certain uses, development would go almost straight to development review under the criteria within that PUD. Recently, that existing PUD had to be amended and the timelines had run out, and it was updated to an urban plan unit development with essentially the same framework as that PUD encompassed in that. It's important to note at that time how that being used. This is a commercial plan unit development, which translated to an urban plan unit development. We had no representations at that time to incorporate housing elements within that. That wasn't done. The framework of the existing PUD was actually through. And that framework had in it a number of uses that we were looking to market that property for. So this property really has been on the market for between 9 and 7 years, however you want to look at that, with various attempts coming forward to look at its development. So go to the next slide.
Mr. Freeman, if I can jump in. So staff has went through a lot of trouble to create a prototype site plan to market the property. And until very recently, have there been any applicants coming through and sniffing around?
Yes, we have various sniffs, as you put it. There are a number of applicants come in and talk to us about the complexities of this particular property.
Right.
And I'm going to go through some of those right now. And you can see that it's located on the eastern side of US 1, north of the Roosevelt Bridge. It's located opposite, almost directly opposite to North River Shores Street or Boulevard. And at that intersection, there's a three-way traffic signal. So any development, depending on its intensity, may have to take some serious reconfiguration or improvements to that intersection to enable the property's development. We also have issues of the size of the site in terms of that being, in terms of efficiency and economies of scale, very difficult to get something on there that would be able to satisfy its own development costs in relation to whatever lease was placed on the property. It's important to say also that this property is city-owned and the requirements of that, the future of the site is it would be leased and not sold to any entity. So we've recently had a number of inquiries. There's been almost a constant dialogue over the last 18 to 2 years, perhaps, with the group Housing Coalition. I don't think I have the title correct, but they have expressed interest in finding property somewhere in the city that will be suitable for housing or for them to develop as housing. And so that discussion has been going on for a number of months. And so that really is where we are at the moment. So we have that idea, that discussion going on. We've not had any formal representations of what that could be, what the lease option would be, how many units would be on the property, or how that would work with the development process. It's an idea. And I know the consortium are really trying to consolidate that as a more viable product. Recently, we had a letter of intent from Land America LLC, and they actually described very precisely what they would be doing in terms of a lease option for the property. They actually suggested a lease of $24,000 per year, 9 years, a rate increase. They're looking at a commercial development. At this point, they think that the market would bear a self-storage facility somewhat similar to the one that you see in the construction now at the north end of Oxford Road. With it being a commercial endeavor, then you would be getting a revenue from that site based on the value of the construction and the return of property tax on that location. So we've got those two options, and they're quite, you could get a polarized view of what could happen on this site. You've got both ends of the scale. The other option is if we're not getting, at the moment, a feasible affordable housing proposal coming forward with some real bones to that, do we set out and go out and say, okay, it's Commission's intent ultimately to see this property used for affordable housing. We're going to move away from the intent, the original intent of this, of providing revenue for the Haven Creek project and with the city properties, and move towards more of saying, okay, we're going to say as a Commission, we're going to move in this direction. And one way of doing that would be to go for an RFP, setting those parameters very clearly. I think we have to be very precise on what we'd be looking for on this, do such an idea, and then move forward with that idea. The other staff are just looking for a general discussion at the moment and some direction of where the Commission would lie on this. Hopefully maybe get some comments from potential lessees.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman.
Thank you, Sue.
I have a question.
Yeah.
The original, maybe you said this, how big is the potential property?
It's just under 2 acres, 1.97.
So knowing some of the potential problems on the
Yes.
property, because I know there's a few, theoretically, how many units could go on that property?
Theoretically, under a straight planned unit development, you're talking 15 units per acre, so you could get almost 30. Now, with it being urban planned unit development, if you had smaller units, we call it a Commission took action to look at the size of the units and the count of units in terms of density. So you can almost have double that if they were small units. Complexity in doing that is you have to provide car parking.
Right. And egress and ingress at that
And
intersection.
then you're talking about traffic volumes. And in that case, you would maybe encounter issues with that intersection and the traffic signalization line.
Okay, thank you.
As a point of reference, a few years ago, we did have a hotel that went way down the road with us, and we actually had site plans, approvals, and discussions, and lease terms. One of the problems they ran into is to put a hotel there, you can do a deceleration lane into the property for about $95,000, but to do the full intersection improvements, the hotel determined was about $750,000, including grading the land and all the stuff to get the site ready. So that's a pretty substantial chunk of change. And that was where they kind of went amok, because they're willing to do a $750,000 improvement to land that's theirs to keep at the end. but they're not willing to do it on a lease. So when you go to look at other commercial leases that say they're site ready, what we did in that case is we started negotiating with them to say, okay, well then we'll agree to give you rent credits to pay for that to get it site ready. But when you're talking about the items that were being sniffed around, as Kevin pointed out, like for example, the guy that just made the offer for $24,000 a year. So at the end of 30 years, they would not have paid enough rent to cover the site preparation. So there's a balance there that if you go to RFP, you also have to be very specific on that issue. Because that, most people are gonna respond, sure, I'll take it, I'll give you $5,000 a month, but make sure it's site ready, and then defining site ready is very complicated. And then we went to referendum. This is a property that was acquired with half-cent sales tax as a result of the referendum. We have it jointly with the county, and that property is subject to our discretion to develop and approve for the purpose of taking 100% of the rent and reinvesting it into Haney Creek. But there are some restricted uses. I know gas station was one, but I don't think I can think of another one. But just so you guys know, there was some limitations based on that referendum.
How do we get around that whole site improvement? I mean, I know we can't get around it, but.
Spend the money, or depending on what the use is, they may only need a decent lane as opposed to the full intersection. And by the way, make it more complicated. There is a major intersection improvement to redo that entire intersection and traffic light on the MPOs.
30 years.
But it's like 10 years out or whatever it is. Now, if it got moved up, because by the way, it benefits all of North River Shores, and so there's other folks that would benefit from it. And the county commission, the others on the MPO board, could move it up, and all of a sudden, if the MPO paid for it, our problem is solved. But that is another thing.
And we talk about the original intent was used to maintain Haney Creek Park. I've asked, but I've heard a rough number that maintenance of just that area is roughly 100,000 miles a year.
I have no idea.
When Sam Emerson was here, he put together, there is no line item that says one part of the Haney Creek. And so Sam said roughly with man hours and things we do here and things we do there and all the stuff, I think he said 75 to 100, but it was really a throw it out there kind of number. He can't go to the accounting and say run number 1, 2, 3 and see what the actual expenditures are. So we don't have that delineated. Now, if in fact we ever lease this property, we would definitely delineate every expense we spend at Haney Creek so we could reimburse ourselves.
Have we reached out to any developers that specialize in affordable housing for tax credits or something like this?
We've not. But, I mean, the situation has been, we've been waiting on inquiries.
Someone to acquire versions.
And the folks that are here tonight that Mr. Blum is commenting on, they're asking as a 501c3 that the county and the city agree to work a deal with them where they don't pay for the land or they get a very nominal lease. I don't know what the exact terms would be, but that's one of the options.
So there'd still be the hurdle of ingress.
And on the site improvement.
Whereas some of the larger tax credit developers, build affordable housing in return for federal tax credits that may be able to.
If you give me the land, I'll figure out the ingress.
Yeah.
Commissioner Brenner?
Yes, I wanted to say that this is what we've been trying to do is to build affordable housing or whatever the magic word is that they use today. And if Mr. Butler's Housing Solutions came in, I think it's the perfect place to put it. We're not putting it in someone's neighborhood that says, not in my backyard, you're not, and we get that all the time. All kinds of different reasons why they don't want this. But I would love to see us to be able to do something with affordable or a housing project or and a nonprofit organization. And I feel really comfortable with Mr. Butler, he called, asking who all was on his board. And all those fine people here in Stewart, Martin County on his board that we all know. I just feel so comfortable with that, more so than it wasn't a car wash, what was it?
Storage.
Storage.
I would just echo what Commissioner Bruner is saying. I would love the Housing Coalition be able to attain this. I know all three of them. I'm sure we, at this point, we've all sat down with them. They're very tenacious, very persistent. I just have some concerns overall. Obviously, cost is one of them. Mr. Martell just gave us the hard facts about just site improvements alone. Who's going to pay for that if we go down the route of affordable housing? Secondly, our own revenues. I mean, we're in a situation where we don't know what it's going to look like 6 months from now, even a year from now. And so, I don't know the answer, but the biggest thing is just the site improvements for any housing development. Who's going to pay for that?
So I will say that I had a Zoom meeting with the Housing Solutions, and when we first discussed this and how they would approach it, and the performance is on them to determine how they would do the site work and stuff. What we discussed was whatever the lease rate we came to terms with, whether that's 1,000 or the storage facilities offering 2,000 or whatever it is, that number would have to also be factored into their performance to see if it's going to work for them. And then that money would go towards the Haynes Creek restoration, but then a lump sum payment equating to what we would have gotten for ad valorem if it wasn't a nonprofit organization that was doing this. Now, having that, if the commission decided to go with the Housing Solutions direction, the ball would be in their court for the next steps on determining the performance, whether or not it's going to work for them.
And I also, I'm not 100% sure how it works. Like, I know a church or a hospital that's a nonprofit can be tax exempt, but do they stay tax exempt when they rent out the units to other? I don't know the answer, honestly, off the top of my head. I don't know if they build 40 units and rent them out to people paying rent. That's a commercial enterprise, and that may trigger ad valorem. I don't know.
What's our legal liability to offering it to one person over another before doing an RFP?
Well, it's as a municipality, you had it open for rent, and we did an RFP, and we got the hotel that responded, and we didn't get a second response, so it's open. So you have the right to enter into a transaction with or anybody you want at this point. So you've covered that procurement side of it.
Well, don't they have the right to do that anyway?
Yeah, anyway. But they, even so, they did the RFP anyway, so if there was a naysayer, they've actually done that anyway.
Yeah, months and months ago, or a long time ago, when I first met with Housing Solution, I've gone to their meeting, I've had a meeting at the police department that we've had, I've talked to Mr. Lane Anderson, other people. And even when we were working through our housing element and trying to figure out how the city of Stewart can become involved in fostering and initiating or doing something to make a dent in the, I don't know, if I use bad words, I'll just say affordable housing for right now, but housing that is more, more workforce, more something that's alignable with people who have less money than others, let's put it that way. Something that somebody could get into, whether as a rental or even as a homeowner. If it's being worked on and provided by some type of a nonprofit organization, possibly in partnership with the city. I know that we've had this, I know that before this, we had a very diligent city manager. Not that the city manager was not diligent, but when we first started and we went through all the stuff about putting the TV sign on there, what's that sign called, Mr. Martel, with the
Lamar billboard. Lamar billboard.
Billboard, Lamar and all that. And, you know, we put it out and we thought that somebody was gonna grab this to make a parcel of Walgreens, a hotel, all these wonderful ideas. And it just hasn't happened. And I think these people have been consistent, meeting in the community, meeting with the county, meeting with the city. And I think that we need to give ourselves a chance, give them a chance, and whatever we need to do, whatever decision we need to do, this apparently is not going to a referendum. We can do this, and we can make a change or make a effort to move forward. They, just like anybody else, like developers, are gonna have to prove themselves. They're gonna have to find a way to possibly go and partner with more people or get the funding or whatever they need to do. But I think that the city of Stewart needs to draw a line in the sand. Yes, Mr. Matheson, we are a seaside town. We want to go north. We're not a beach, but we're a seaside town. Whatever. But we just need to draw a line in the sand and say that we want to help affordable housing. And we want to do something. And it's going to be hard for us to figure it out and say that we want to do something and how we're going to do it with the partners that are coming forward. Yes, a retail guy, 24,099 years, and we see the money, and we know what the tax implications are, and the ad valorem taxes and so on. But I think that I had almost made up my mind that somehow if somebody came up and wanted to do something wonderful and had the gumption to keep going at it, in spite the somewhat impossibilities that we see in Martin County sometimes when it comes to somebody making up their mind and standing up for affordable housing. And again, if somebody's upset by that word, whatever word is it that you want to insert, that's good too. I just think that we need to say that we want staff and the attorney to work something out so that the city can start that effort to say that we are trying to make a dent. And we're gonna lose some money because we've lost money all these years. Nobody has been paying the taxes on it. And now that we have a chance with some people who've had the longevity and the tenaciousness, like Commissioner Glassway said, I'm not fighting with anybody. That you know, now we have another thing, a little thing in the, a little wrench has been thrown in there. And I just think we need to just say that we want to work with these housing solutions and we want to do whatever we need to do to get this partnership going.
Vice Mayor,
Is that
right?
a motion?
Well, I mean, staff's looking for direction.
Yeah.
That was the right time. The housing solutions could present an offer.
Right.
No one has ever stopped them.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
if there's no more discussion, I would like to make a motion.
please.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
I would like to make a motion to direct staff to work with the housing solution.
Seconded. Thank you for taking
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Former Commissioner Blount. One of my biggest hesitations was the hurdle of the ingress and egress. And I was unaware, in former talk, I mean, I'm thrilled with what the Housing Solutions Council is trying to do, which is daunting. My last talk with your members was prior to the pandemic work. And I mean, I just hope to hear that you guys are confident in pursuing this undertaking with the ingress and egress and some of the other hurdles properly. You know, what the city manager described, you are. And that's,
You know, that's just one part of the whole picture. We've got the site prep, we've got the intersection, we've got overall funding. You know, there are a lot of hurdles that we're gonna have to get through, but this is a piece of property that was attractive to us and we wanted to go ahead down the road to see if we can make it work financially.
And if there's anybody that can do it, I think you
Yeah.
should agree. I mean, in all honesty,
Ms. Madeline is here.
Commissioner, are you done questioning, Commissioner Matheson, are you done questioning Mr. Moore?
yes, I mean, I'm glad to hear they're confident and think there's a lot of opportunity here. And, there's some undoings and deals with the county, but I think all these hurdles can be overcome.
Commissioner Bruner?
I heard our manager talk about money and budgets and all that. And I feel strongly about that too, but I liked you of saying what she said, and let's get this done. And I believe our other commissioners are too. If it means lower till they get the best deal, whatever, I would really like to see it done.
Okay, well, before we call a vote, I think I would like to give a little direction for myself, or for staff. Thank you, Mr. Dice, for bringing up the issue. I was a little questioning the ad valorem tax. I would like to see us negotiate that there's a provision that whatever ad valorem would have been collected were it to be a commercial rental property, that we could somehow take that in, or at least go forward with that in the negotiations. And I am concerned about the size of the property. I mean, you know that I'm championing this project and we're excited, but we're talking about just under 2 acres. So even at maximum density, if we were to give you all the bells and whistles, I mean, that's 30 units, or 60 units. Right. So, I want us to, this is a good opportunity. I want to see what you come back with, and, seems like we're all in favor of this, but maybe there are other opportunities out there too on a slightly larger scale project that doesn't have these huge challenges. So maybe we can get a bigger impact, but sounds like we're all in favor of working with you. Okay? Ms. Kendall? Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Bruner?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Glassman? Yes. Commissioner Matheson?
Yes.
Mayor Meyer?
Yes. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, moving on to our final D&D for this evening, COVID-19 discussion, next steps. Let's see, I know Commissioner Glassman had mentioned, she had a few comments. Mr. Dice, would you like to walk us through?
Yeah, I just want to give a couple comments before you guys start talking. We've been evaluating our internal plan as far as, returning to full staffing and work. HR has been developing the plan. As a matter of fact, I got this folder tonight when I came back in of evaluations they've been doing. And they've been reviewing the CDC and OSHA guidelines as it relates to workplace safety in the midst of COVID. Some of the things we're doing internally, if you've been around the building at all lately, you might have seen it. We're creating separation barriers in our permitting area, in our finance area, our 10th Street area, to do citizen staff separation barriers. All of the staff has been provided with masks and with sanitizer fluid, which is also refillable. Cleaning protocols are being put in place. We're looking at, I thought we would have the governor's information Friday. We still don't have it. Some of this discussion was supposed to revolve around that, but unfortunately we don't have that in place yet. So depending on what comes out with that this week, we are planning to reopen our 10th Street program for summer activities. I spoke with Boys and Girls Club. They're also looking at doing the same thing. And we're talking together with our executive director about possibility of even moving that further up into May, due to if the governor opens stuff back up, parents go to work, school's still not in session, and kids are sitting at home, elementary school kids at home because parents need to work. So providing full day activities for those kids in our different programs. So I've been talking with Fletch about that and our reopening along with the Boys and Girls Club. School board has not decided yet if they're going to do their summer programs. They don't know yet if they're going to open their summer programs up or not. They're debating that. Our special events, I think that obviously they'll stay no special events until our order is released, which our order right now is set to, our internal one is set to be done May 11th unless you extend it. And then after that, I think we need to have a discussion here now, because around Memorial Day and July 4th. July 4th may seem like a long ways away, but within the next 2 to 3 weeks, we have contracts that we have to commit to if we're going to pull that event off. And then Memorial Day, as you know, we normally have a nice parade and event afterwards, and folks from the Memorial Day organizations have contacted us to find out if they were going to be allowed to have that or not this year. that's another discussion we should revolve around while we're here. Along the lines of economic recovery, Jim Turowski, along with is our representative in-house, along with Kev Freeman, and a pretty large group made up of the Business Development Board, the Economic Council, I think the county just jumped in, the Chamber of Commerce, leadership. I think they're having a once-a-week phone call and trying to put methodologies in place about making, bringing business back and making our citizens feel comfortable to patronize local businesses once the governor gives some reopening guidelines. And then we'll have a discussion about the testing that Commissioner Layton brought up. So whichever direction you want to head in first, it's fine with me.
Well, I mean, let's just make sure we're all on the same page. You discussed earlier public facilities. I mean, at this point, we don't have anything we don't have any local ordinances or regulations that we're in control of closing anything other than our public facilities, our sports arenas.
Correct.
But
you also, the city manager has done like the drive-up windows, the 3-hour parking.
So it's staff operations, but it's not like we as a city have adopted an ordinance that is, more restrictive of the governors. We're following the county and the county is following the governor. So, I mean, I'm more interested in us figuring out Memorial Day and July 4th.
I have a comment on the 10th, the opening of the 10th Street and having the students come in there for the summer. So our summer capacity is usually what, 50, 60 students?
I don't know if Jim knows that answer or not. Jim is on the line, I believe.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We will have 160 openings. Our requirements of the CDC grant annually are 200.
Okay, so do we suddenly jump down our social distancing, or do we work the program and the shifts in such a way that we have students staggered out, or would all 120 students be there all day from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m.?
So it would be my preference and direction to staff that they first evaluate those whose parents are actually at work, proof of employment, rather than us just being a babysitter for a parent who's not at work, and then evaluate the number of students we can actually put in place. At Unified Command this morning, we discussed that. And I also discussed it with Boys and Girls Club on the fact that you can't social distance kids. It's not going to happen. The kids in my neighborhood, the kids in the East Stewart community, they're out there playing right now. I mean, they're in the playgrounds and stuff right now. I mean, and on the street. So it's not like they're abiding by social distancing currently. It's more about our cleaning measures and protective measures that we end up putting in place.
Okay, so I've had lots of meetings and different things with people. People have said, what has COVID done and whatnot. I smile when I think about some things from COVID. And one of the things is seeing the Palm Beach County Courthouse, or I haven't gone to my courthouse, I don't know, just appeared by whatever. I haven't gone to my courthouse, but Palm Beach or some other county courthouse or whatever, when they're taking temperatures and so on. I went to boarding school. I was a day girl, but it was a boarding school. And when the term started, for 3 weeks after the term started, everybody had their temperature taken every morning. We all had to line up and take our temperatures because everybody's going from different places and whatnot. And that was just one of those things. And I don't know if I don't know what kind of protocols we would have in place, but if we can't do all the other stuff when we're doing cleaning, would we be willing to have a period where even at the entrance of kids coming back because they're coming from different households with varying things going on, would we be able to check temperatures or something? Is that one of the protocols that could be in place?
Yeah, we could definitely put that in place. I've been talking with HR about that, doing that for staff as well. So we have had that discussion about getting those temperature readers. I will tell you that temperature is not the end all be all, and that there's a lot of asymptomatic people out there.
And children especially are not showing the same symptoms all the time.
I know, it's just.
And Commissioner Clark, we have been taking the temperatures of the staff ever since the breakout.
Okay.
Keeping up with science, you know,
I
what
want,
actually works with science.
I want to talk about the parade and July 4th. Those are the two things you want us to get worked out.
Can I'm sorry, terribly sorry to interrupt. The owner of the lab is here and an effort of his time.
Oh.
Yes.
If we could actually maybe talk a little bit about it, because he's been here since 6. And I know as much as he loves listening to us, we'd probably like to go home and
I
spend time with
appreciate
his
the
family.
reminder, Commissioner, yes, absolutely. So, Mr. Goff.
He's waited this long.
Yes, Mr. Gorman, let me just give them a little bit of, Mr. Gorman owns a lab. He is a City of Stewart resident. He owns a lab in Fort Pierce. And he is actively in the process of doing something with the city of Fort Pierce, testing COVID and doing antibody testing for about 1,200 people in the city of Fort Pierce. And so we kind of reached out to each other, and I just basically wanted to get some information from him to see if specifically maybe there's any sort of testing we would want to do to our employees before they come back, or just get more information and see his price point is very, very attractive. He is the end all be all with the lab. He just told me today that the FDA just approved the Abbott antibody test today. So
That's the one where anybody can come and get tested, correct?
that's for the antibodies.
Antibodies.
So he and I spoke with the city manager, and I asked him to come tonight to see if that's something that we would be interested in doing. I think it potentially would be beneficial, especially for the cost that what it would cost us.
Mr. Gorman, would you
Sure.
be available to answer any questions from the
Yeah,
board?
absolutely. Just to give you a quick background, my name's Christian Gorman. I know some of you. But I have a full-service clinical lab in Fort Pierce, Florida that is Joint Commission accredited. Probably one of the only private labs in the state of Florida that actually carries the Joint Commission accreditation, because it's not required, it's over and above any standards that we're required to have. And I just wanted to make everyone aware, because you hear so much on the news that there isn't testing available, it's hard to get tested, there's not enough. There is plenty of testing available if people are listening and are willing to hear from private companies. We have the exact same platform that Quest has for the antibody testing, and we have the best platform on the market for PCR testing. And it is available, and it is fast and it's portable. So the city of Fort Pierce reached out to me after we were on Fox and NBC, and then we were picked up nationally on MSN on their website, about doing testing in the city of Fort Pierce for a lot of those who aren't able to really afford and get testing. There is testing available at doctors' offices and clinics up and down the east coast of Florida. I provide the services for a lot of them. But for those that are unaware or unable to go get that testing, so we're rolling out a program at Fort Pierce. I'm actually going to do a site visit with them tomorrow. And I'm basically helping them handle it from A to Z, everything from operations, collections, data collection, screening, testing. And we're doing a combination of antibody testing and PCR testing. The PCR is the swab you hear about, do I have the virus, as I stand here in front of you. And the antibody testing is, did I previously have the virus, or maybe am I just getting over the virus and now have antibodies that show that and might possibly tell us about immunity in the future. So by doing a combination of those testing, we were able to put out a program for the city of Fort Pierce to basically test 1,200 people in 5 days with same-day turnaround times at a cost per test roughly from $52 to $54. I can tell you that Quest is charging the state of Florida $110 per test for PCR testing, and all they're doing is picking up the sample and running it. So with the city of Fort Pierce, I'm actually working with them and my team to handle the whole project and doing it for half the cost. By offering different types of testing and offering a much lower price point for the testing.
Mr. Gorman, the $52 to $54 per test, is that PCR? What about antibody?
Yeah, so that's the combination. So with the city of Fort Pierce, we're gonna do roughly 750 to 800 antibody tests and 350 to 400 PCR tests. So depending on what somebody is looking to do and how much they need from the lab, meaning if it's just, you need me to come and take the samples. Let's say, for instance, the city of Stewart has their own EMTs or paramedics that are gonna draw their employees, and you just need me to provide the lab service and the results. You can do antibody testing roughly around $39 per person. You know, if you're gonna be doing PCR testing, you're looking at more like $90 to $100 per person. You know, so with the city of Fort Pierce, we're working on doing both of them so we can get multiple data points and test as many as people as possible for the lowest cost.
Thank you, sir. Have you been in contact at all with anybody at Martin County?
I actually received a call from Martin County Commissioner today, I believe they're the assistant to one of the commissioners, Colleen, about doing testing, and they're looking at it. I've been working with Indiantown also on rolling out a program for them. So, I mean, a lot of people are starting to, you know, come to the table at this point.
It might be interesting to think about sort of a group buy, you know, get some volume for you and
yeah,
perhaps,
well, I'm gonna be honest with you. It's not so much a question of how much money is the lab gonna make. It's really more of a question is how much less are we gonna lose? We're bleeding. I mean, we have an overhead of over $600,000 a month, and I have 50-something employees. So it's a matter of if I can make $10 a test and keep the doors open, you know, because most of our traditional volume in business is non-existent right now.
Sorry, I know that you said, I just wanted to have your full name, your first and last name, but it's something Gorman.
Christian Gorman.
The name, Christian Gorman, the name of your business.
It's Dynix Diagnostics, and that's D-Y-N-I-X, and diagnostics is spelled with an X at the end instead of a CS. But we have a website, you can see all of our staff, all of our equipment, accreditation, information on the COVID testing.
I'll
platforms we run.
forward, he sent me an email with all of his, I'll forward it to David and he can forward it to you guys.
well, I'm very interested in the antibody testing, you know, PCR, and Mr. Dice can correct me, but, you know, we have access to PCR as it is now through our channels. The issue is that, you know, and that only gives you, as you said, a snapshot at a point in time. But you could get the PCR test and get infected 1 second later. And so the antibody is really kind of the holy grail, I think, for our reopening, any reopening plans.
The nice thing about the antibody testing is you can do so much more antibody testing for a lower cost point.
But
so I could run up to 2,000 antibody tests a day.
do you have any, aren't there been any updates to, I understand that there was some criticism that the test had some false negatives, about 15%, 20% false negatives?
That would be the Abbott ID Now platform.
Okay,
so
this is a different
yeah,
platform.
so that the Abbott ID Now is PCR testing.
Okay.
They basically took a machine the size of a toaster oven that is used typically in doctor's offices to get a flu result. Do you or do you not have the flu? And they were extremely quick, had to retrofit that because that machine is sitting in doctor's offices in places all over the country already.
Right.
So how can we retrofit that and make that work for these applications with COVID-19? Abbott did a fantastic job doing that. It's not a perfect system, but it wasn't designed to be that. There are molecular platforms that are 100% dead on. You know, when it comes to the antibody testing, the FDA basically allowed companies to self-regulate and go to market on these antibody tests, whether they're a plastic card,
right,
you know, with a finger prick of blood. I would liken that to an instant urine cut, you know, that gives you an instant drug test result versus a piece of equipment that could be $100,000 to $250,000 piece of equipment that runs that same type of test, but on a high complexity analyzer.
The test that you're running, do you have any information about the, you know?
I do. So, yep. So it's about 100% accurate with 99.6% sensitivity. That has been independently verified by Washington, the state of Washington, the UW lab. That link is on our website along with the FDA EUA approval as of today of that Abbott antibody test. And that is run on a high complexity immunoassay analyzer. It's called an Abbott i2000. I also have an Abbott i1000. So I have 2 machines that can run that test at a maximum throughput of about 2,000 tests a day.
Mr. Mayor, can I say something? The reason that I brought this to you guys is because when I spoke to the city manager, he had mentioned that they were potentially looking at doing some antibody tests. Now, we all sit on those calls, and we know how long the test results sometimes take to come back. The reality is he doesn't have to get our approval for the amount of money, for the very little amount of money it would take just to get our employees tested. But I think it is something that we should seriously consider doing for our employees, is offering the antibody test. If he can offer it at $35 or $39, that is a fraction of what it would cost if we were to go use our wellness center.
Right. I mean, and I encourage, if you guys can find a cheaper, better option, by all means. I mean, I have a lot of people contact the clinics that I service that say, well, why isn't the test free? And I always tell them, I encourage them to go and search for a free test, but.
So I think this is relevant for the simple fact that we're talking about what the next steps are. And
Absolutely.
if we're talking about what the next steps, we should also be talking about what the next steps for our staff. And I work in an environment where we work very close with each other. And I think it would be important information to know in my office and for myself if I have the antibodies. So I know going forward, personally what my next steps would be. So, like I said, city manager doesn't have to get our approval for this, but I think this is something that is important. This is something we've never faced before, and if we can get as much information as we can, I think we should do that.
So you don't need approval, you just need some direction?
If you guys think it's a good idea, I'm texting with our HR director. She likes the idea also. So if you guys have no objection, let's put it that way, then I'll move
How
forward.
much money would this come out of, just so that we?
Probably manager contingencies.
It's about $8,000.
For the antibody test.
Well,
for-
39 times 200 is what I did.
For staff. I think that's, a no-brainer.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't even,
Just to clarify, I can get to those lower prices if I don't have to provide all the staffing.
well, that's something.
So I know we
You
had
can
talked
work
about
that out
that.
with
Yeah,
her.
right. You might not want city employees, if you're doing testing on the public, to use paramedics and such like that. But if you have people that can draw a blood sample and you need me to just take it, run it, and get you back results very fast.
So I will get your contact information from the commissioner, and then I'll have our HR director. I'll have our HR director reach out to you and
There are
set
some
everything
public,
up.
not for city.
Obviously, it would be on a voluntary basis. I can't force staff to take it, but I'm sure they'll want it.
I really appreciate you bringing this great, and, let's see maybe how it goes, and I would be willing to discuss maybe. figuring
Opening it up,
out- Opening it up.
I can tell you there's a lot of companies that are doing it as
Mhm.
well, that are doing it for their staff and employees.
Yeah, potentially we could maybe move down the line.
I think about 90% of them use health insurance. They just don't know what the relationship is or whether it's covered by health insurance or not. I would
Right.
mention that if it's a voluntary by
Yeah.
employee and it's covered by insurance, you can go to the clinic and get it for free.
Well,
That's an option.
I can tell you where it stands right now, so.
Is that antibody test available though?
It is available. I'm doing it for multiple clinics. I can tell you that.
It is not
most-
free through our clinic.
Yeah.
It's not free,
No.
but it's covered by health insurance.
I can tell you that,
No,
No, it's an additional $75 per employee if I send them to our clinic.
so the PCR testing, they've come out with a lot of regulations and cut through a lot of regulations to have that covered by insurance. They're waiving copays, they're waiving deductibles. I say that's what they say they're doing. I've seen that not be the case in many circumstances. And they've also started to go that same route with antibody testing, but they've assigned it a CPT code, which is what you would bill insurance or you would bill Medicare and Medicaid. But they have not assigned it any value or substantiation of what they're going to pay and what substantiates that test being ordered. So anything that's billed through insurance has to be ordered by a physician or a provider. So there would have to be some sort of physician or provider that is writing an order, just like a prescription, to go to a pharmacy. And they've assigned a CPT code, and that they will pay it, but under which guidelines they have not, done that.
I think it looks like we're all in favor of having.
I did have a question that was asked, if an employee was willing to pay for their family member to be tested, would you?
Like I say, if we're doing something where we're getting a bunch of people tested and we can run it through a program that's efficient and fast, I have no problem offering it to as many people that want it. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, right now, I've had the phones ringing off the hook at the lab ever since we've been on, that we were on the news. But the unfortunate thing that most people don't realize is, as a laboratory, we typically do not service direct to the public, nor are we really allowed to do that. The majority of lab testing has to be ordered by some physician, or you have to meet some criteria. So what we've been doing is listing all of our locations in this area that I service. My client is the physician or the physician's group or a clinic, that these places are offering the test. And I know there's multiple ones from Vero all the way through Miami that are offering it anywhere from $99 to $150, for the antibody testing.
All right, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Forward your information to David and he'll reach out.
Appreciate it.
See, just to follow up, something structured with immediate family members. You're gonna look into that?
Yes.
That was a very valid question.
Yeah.
This is there's no point in all this shutdown if before we reopen, we don't properly test and know, we need this knowledge.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Fantastic.
Thank you for listening and allowing me to talk about
Sure. I like talking. Okay, so let's talk about some of the other stuff. I think we're gonna learn a lot, just to level set about, opening 10th Street and some of the other stuff. We're hoping to get the governor's, some initial word from the governor. It's gonna hopefully be this week, they're saying, that he'll provide some guidance from his task force. He has indicated, however, that it's not going to be like you're seeing on the news in Georgia and other states where it's gonna be just this wide open. He said it's going to be a trickle. He said it's going to be a long game. So that indication to me says, and he even said that phase 1 reopening would look a lot like what you're doing right now. So,
Well, hopefully barber shops are in phase 1.
I've got my own hair, learn how to do it. And Dr. Burks at the federal level has also indicated that she strongly believes that social distancing will be continuing like through the summer. And so,
Yes. Yeah.
So
just to the 4th of July.
right, exactly. So let's. Vice Mayor?
Yeah. I thought about it when I put my hand up. I was gonna ask, city manager, Janet, you've been talking so long.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's not Memorial Day and it's not July 4th, that's there too. But, the governor. When the governor comes out, whether it's, Thursday or whatever, whenever he says what he says. We're gonna use those guidelines to help us with the, if we agree to do 10th Street to follow, we're gonna follow whatever, of course, whatever the governor says. So if
Yeah.
it's not feasible.
Right, yeah. So, I mean, if he says still whatever 10 or whatever it is, then obviously we probably can't do that. But I can tell you, prior to going into Safer at Homes, even when we were at 10, DCF still wanted daycares open.
Right.
So it all depends on what comes out when he, releases the Safer at Home order.
Okay, I remember exactly what I was saying now. I'm done with that. So businesses. I don't know if the business is new. I mean, I think we've been trying to say that we're going through Zoom and other things. I'm surprised that somebody like Mr. Mezapel or somebody else isn't here tonight or whatever. But I've seen the emails where people are saying, open up Stewart, open up Stewart. I know that there are people in Palm City asking us to open up Stewart and whatnot. And I was just wondering if we had a good sounding board from some of our downtown people, and if they're giving you ideas or telling you. I know that we talked about having the outdoor, maybe it's in here, but unless it was before.
The only actions taken by the city as it relates to businesses were to open them and make their businesses operate easier.
Yeah.
The city manager waived parking,
outside,
the city manager waived code enforcement. There is no city
Right.
restriction against any
Thank you,
business.
Ms. Martell. Yeah, Vice Mayor, just to clarify, we can't reopen businesses if the government
And that's
doesn't.
why people are
Yeah.
sending all these emails.
Yeah, so we just have
and
to
all
keep
this stuff.
educating them.
So I just, and I was hoping that we'd at least be hearing more from some of those.
Can we talk about the things that we can do,
Yeah.
like the code
Yes.
enforcement, like
Thank
the
you.
parking? Let's say the governor comes out on Friday and it's like, woo, restaurants are back open, bars are back open. What are we going to continue with the changes we made in code enforcement and parking?
Well, I mean, it depends on, like you said, what he did. I imagine he's gonna do a phase back, like 50% occupancy, what he does to the restaurants, and still not with the bars, and the bars in the next phase, kind of like I did the phase approach into it, do a phase reverse approach. But let's just say he does a Georgia, everything's open, which I doubt is gonna happen. Then, yeah, we would determine if the patrons are coming back, and I'm just gonna use downtown as an example. If the patrons are coming back, obviously the first thing I'm gonna do is take away the reserved curbside parking pickups, because that takes away parking spaces. And then if it's it's popular and parking spaces are packed, then we'll go back to the 3-hour parking. Our rollback will be dependent upon patronization of those businesses.
What about our tram? Have you thought about that?
So the tram, again, would not open immediately. It would be with the repatronization of downtown and the businesses. So if he did the 50% or whatever it is, and we saw that people are coming back down, I would probably reactivate the trams.
What about our parks and our permits? If he opens it up and somebody wants to have their child's birthday party in June, are we gonna have them apply for a party permit?
Again, it depends if we're talking the 10 or less social distancing, or if he goes back to I think it was 50 prior to the 10, or if he goes back to the 50. It all depends on what his orders come out at.
Commissioner, these are really good questions, but I'm thinking maybe we should just try to structure most of the guidelines from the federal level, and many states that are reopening, unlike Georgia, are these 3 phases, right? With a criteria for each phase. So maybe we can have staff give us some initial ideas around what's going to be phase 1, what's phase 2, phase 3, our public parking phase 2, what's going to be phase 1, where's the tram, that can fit into that framework.
Perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I can put that out, and I mean, we have that for staff, our internal stuff. We can do that also for our public side stuff, but there's not a whole lot for us to release. I mean, we didn't close down a whole lot of stuff to
For
begin
me,
with.
I would like phases, and I want strong criteria for getting into those phases. And I mean, it's not going to have to reinvent the wheel.
I will tell you, I've been one of the unified command meetings, and Martin County is doing very, very well. And we already meet probably into the second phase of the criteria that was released.
However, I want us to keep in mind, Rob Lord should be a very important voice in any of our decisions that we can make locally, because he has said we really got to keep a lock on it, or else we're going to blow through our hospital capacity. That's, for me, maybe we should talk about what our personal criteria are. For me, this is all about hospital capacity.
So he says that, but I'm getting at the other side from the hospital that there's only 4 patients in there.
Right.
So it's like, and that they've got 98 beds available.
But that's because we've tamped everything down.
Right.
He's saying,
He's saying, keep on, this is a success. The way we know we're successful is the numbers we're seeing, but the failure is so horrible. If we look through our hospital beds, that's not worth it.
But again, that can't come from, I mean, as much, we're not shutting it down, we're not opening it back.
Right, exactly.
That's out of our, I mean, we can be advocates for it and, continue to educate, but.
So we need to decide on 4th of July.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me get to.
Memorial Day and 4th of July are our major
All right,
things that.
Memorial Day. Memorial Day is usually a parade, right? And an event, a large event in Memorial especially considering it's a lot of, veterans, it's a lot of older people that we're celebrating.
Can I ask about, didn't we close something with the veterans? Was it the rain or something? And they were really, it was just, did we close it last year?
The
Because of
parade?
rain? Yes.
2 years ago.
2 years
I
ago.
remember how
We moved it.
wild and bad they.
We moved, yeah, we had to because it rained that entire weekend and we moved it like to the following Saturday, maybe, yeah. Because there's a big turnout for it.
Ceremony occurred in the,
I'm sorry, Jim was trying to say something about, go ahead, Jim.
Ms. Bilski?
yeah, I was just going to let you know that during that year, Commissioner Layton, that was done at the county building and the parade was canceled, and that was 2 years ago.
Jim, you had I think a recent discussion with one of the parade organizers. What was their feeling on if we said no?
I think they're fine. I think they're really looking to the city for guidance at this point. Jim Reardon is with Stewart Parades. We've had several conversations, and I've also spoken to Tony Reese with the Veterans Council. They really are looking to us as to what we want to do. I reached out to Port St. Lucie just to kind of, figure out what other communities are doing, and Port St. Lucie has in fact canceled Memorial Day services, and they didn't have a parade.
Right now, the city commission has entered an order preventing anybody from applying for special.
That ends May 11th.
That ends May 11th. Is it going to extend past May 11th?
But let's talk logistics. At what point would they have already had to pull a permit to plan this? What's the Jim, what's the time? What's the planning that goes into Memorial Day? Is it weeks? Is it days?
Yeah, they apply 30 days in advance. They generally, we have them on our list as a reoccurring event. So all they need to be able to do is let us know in a 30-day notice that they're planning on going ahead and doing the event. They have reached out. The application is in, and I just have not moved forward on that due to our temporary suspension.
They're requesting a permit per usual to have the standard kit caboodle like most years. There's no desire, did you see anything in the permit application that looked any different?
No, there's nothing that looks any different from any previous years. The only difference is, how would we manage the social distancing idea?
I find, from my perspective, it's not the parade, are you going
It's
to
that
process
assembly event.
applications? Because whose application for the birthday party in the park is more important or less important? It's a global decision that the city has to address. You can't treat one entity different than the other.
And currently, we're not processing any applications.
Right. Vice Mayor?
Barbara, since I think veterans are an important part of our country and our history and heritage, I think it's important to even single them out and make a special exemption if we want to do it. But I don't believe it should be a parade. But I mentioned this lightly to the city manager. If we do something like a motorcade, where the city code enforcement and social distancing, everything is still in place, if we put some guidelines, there's no one on the street except veterans. And I saw this done at a veteran funeral over in St. Petersburg. They had it on the news, where the DFW, the veterans lined up. It was not a lot of them, but they were lined up 6 feet apart. And the person who had passed away drove by, they drove by, and I think, if we have those veterans nicely lined up, use that park, have representative of each of those categories where they call the names and everything, have those representatives there, have people lined up, and then have the others just in a motorcade driving by, have us as residents. It might seem like it's a lot, and maybe a lot of people won't come out to it, but I think we won't miss the opportunity. We won't miss that day in our nation. And I know that this COVID is serious, and sometimes we have to give up certain things, but I think that we can have a nicely done event. We may not have the speaker, per se, or we could even have the speaker and it would be broadcast like Zoom or MCTV or whatever, so it's there for posterity. But, we have that representative group there set out in the park, and we drive by and honor them in a motorcade. And because families are together, or whoever people have been working together, whether they're fire trucks or whatever, so 2 or 3 people are in that fire truck or whatever it is, the same single individuals who come by in their specialty cars or whatever.
Vice Mayor, if I can, sorry, just to interrupt, we don't organize this.
I know, but I'm saying that if it's our park.
Right.
So we could say what happens in our park, we could tell them, if we're gonna give you a special, permit for our park, this is what we'd like to see in our park.
Let's talk to.
If Jim Reardon and the other people want that, then
Let's see if they're even open to that, right? I mean, maybe we should have that discussion.
Jim Karolski, can I speak?
Yeah, please, Mr. Carlson.
Yeah, I actually, Vice Mayor, I heard about that idea. I thought it was actually kind of a neat idea. I reached out to Jim Reardon, and he was as enthusiastic as he was beyond himself on trying to figure out how to organize that. So I just wanted you to be aware of his response and my research on that. We're kind of at a communication disadvantage to try and get the word out, and even our local newspaper is sort of half-staffed right now. So, you know, I mean, we can communicate anything back to him. I just don't know if that's something that they're.
Well, the question would be, to do that, you would have to staff the streets to regulate the crowd. If we put a motorcade or a parade together, people will come to it. People are itching right now. They're on edge. If we put a parade together, they're gonna show up. So just know you're gonna have, people who are not socially distancing on the boardwalk today, because they're starting to go out and get edgy. You invited a couple thousand people to Memorial Park, they'll show.
And it's less than 30 days.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor,
Why don't we skip that and talk later about July 4th?
I see 2 big pieces of information that could potentially come to us on the horizon. One is the governor's, release of his information in faith. And the other, we just spoke about. I mean, we would have a whole lot more knowledge if all the city employees got antibody tests, and we could just look at that number and see how it relates. Right now, we don't have information like that, but that would be tremendously helpful. Right now, though, to encourage people to come out and break social distancing, it scares me right now.
I agree. And my only concern is that I feel like we need to be more proactive in our decision, meaning that if there's a permit sitting there, we need to decide if we're going to approve it or not, because it's not. We needed to, yeah, they need an answer from us, and then if we approve their permit, then we need to talk about what are we going to do with all the other ones that are going to come.
I don't think I'm in favor of approving a permit for a mass group of people, at this point.
I agree with you. I think
I would love to
too
see them
risky.
be creative and come up with an alternative, and hopefully some of your creativity, Jim, you can, help give them some ideas. I think, I agree with you
Some
too, Vice
limited
Mayor.
service or something, and let it be broadcast, but I don't.
I know, we all are on the same page, but the reality is, I mean, if we open it up, it's an invitation for disaster.
Massive amounts of people.
I heard the governor today around, I forget what time, in Palm Beach Mayor. They're gonna open up Wednesday, but it's gonna be in 3 phases, and it's gonna be very slow. But they are gonna allow you to go on your boat, but you can't get, on, what's the island down there, Peanut Island? Yeah, and he was tough and said, this is what the sheriff's gonna do, and we will be arresting, and just really hard, but just slowly.
That's different than talking about approving a permit for a parade.
Right.
Yeah, well, I know, but I'm just saying, I'm for it, I'm not, I mean, I agree with you, I don't want the parade. I mean, too few days.
I think whatever decision you make in this, you're going to end up getting 50% of the people who are going to like your answer and 50% of the people that aren't.
We're used to that, Mr. Gross.
So I think that in the end, you guys are probably going to end up getting the comments from the public. So it does make sense that you weigh in on this thing and, you know, help me kind of get through this thing and figure out what we're going to do.
Well, sounds like we have decided.
Yeah.
We're not in favor of approving that permit.
As for the 4th of July, the contract that the city has for $55,000 that we lose the money is July or June 2nd. So technically you could make the decision in the second meeting of May, but we have got to notify them at least 30 days in advance or else we have to pay the freight for it.
For the fireworks?
For the fireworks. And Jim has to go out and spend another 18 on a barge. And on top of that, the question is, so let's do this 3-phase thing, and let's say for sake of conversation, the governor comes up this Friday and says, yep, it's gonna be a 3-phase thing, and it's gonna be wide open by July 1st. Are you, city commissioners, gonna be the ones that have the first 20,000 person party? Right. I mean, that's the real question. Do we need to wait till May to make that decision? Because it's highly unlikely that you guys are gonna be the litmus test on that one.
Yeah, they don't want that.
Now, it doesn't have to be made tonight, but I just want to remind you, we have got to stay on that 4th of July because there's exposure under that contract.
Well, the first meeting in May 11th, is there a chance?
I can tell you the governor's gonna have us open by July 4th.
No, but I mean, is there a chance we could have all city employees, have there anybody?
No way.
Okay, July 4th. What we do with the fireworks is an amazing amenity. It is not Independence Day.
No.
Independence Day is not fireworks. It's patriotism. It's the United States of America. We can't stop anyone from celebrating, you know, Independence Day on their own. The fireworks is a nice to have thing. And I know it would feel so good for us to do that and have this fireworks in the sky and even say people could look at them from their windows or get on their roof and look at them. But we're looking at, who knows how this virus is gonna hurt us in the coming years. And we're gonna throw away $75,000 to put on a light show. I mean, you know.
When funds might be pretty slim pickings.
Right.
Well,
I mean, you know, I grew up we did fireworks in the driveway.
Right.
We'd be better
I
off
love my Roman candle in the driveway.
spending that money towards testing.
I hear you there. So I don't know, maybe we can use the time, the next couple months to come up with what sort of creative.
We have 2 meetings. We have May 11th and May 26th, and that decision needs to be
What
made.
sort of virtual things they can do.
And to go to your point, listen, there's not much the governor's gonna tell me that I'm still gonna be comfortable to have all those people downtown.
It doesn't.
So we
Something-
certainly can wait, but I mean, I just don't see what's gonna change in my mind.
Something to keep in mind as well, I have been reaching out to our neighboring communities to do a little survey. And although Port St. Lucie has in fact canceled their Memorial Day, they're still on the fence on Freedom Fest, which is a huge event in Port St. Lucie. My concern is if they decide to cancel their event and we don't, we would potentially be having the fireworks show for.
70,000 people.
I feel if the people, you know, start getting our life back a little bit by little bit, those 2 events aren't gonna be as important as being able to get out and be with your family, go places and do things. I don't think it'll be as a big deal.
When is the final deadline to get out of this contract?
It's 30 days. The question is from when they mobilize. So they're not gonna mobilize on July 3rd.
Right.
They're probably gonna mobilize on July 2nd or July 1st. So that, I'm saying June 1st.
Right.
Really is the magic day. But then, really, to me, it's May 26th, because that's really your last meeting before that day.
But why is it, if we're talking about it now,
Oh, no.
just to put it out there, why is it we can't make a decision now?
Yeah.
We could,
We could, and let them get used to it, let them find
Give
out.
you a hypothetical, just
Absolutely. I love hypotheticals.
every city of Stewart employee already has the antibodies.
Can we ask Helen what you?
And way more of the US population has antibodies, and COVID death rates aren't
Okay.
2 to 4%, they're 0.1 to 0.2%.
Mr. Dyer?
Can I just clarify that antibodies doesn't equate to immunity? So I just want, the testing is good, but
I understand.
okay, I just want to make sure, because you keep
What I'm
talking about the
saying is
antibodies
we're
test.
just up here with this tremendous lack of information. We haven't tested our entire country, we should.
Well,
But,
how did you
I
do
mean,
all that?
I mean, this is a positive hypothetical that does it hurt? I mean, we are, I think, in agreement that odds are we're not gonna have it. But there's no detriment to us deciding to cancel and pushing the time we have under the contract till the second meeting in May. I mean, I'll ask for city attorney, is there any negative between us deciding now?
I know that, I don't think that there's any, I think that we financially are secure in doing it. I also know, you know, that if I was the guy and I was gonna have to hire people to organize the 4th of July and you were gonna cancel, I'd like to know sooner than later.
Right, right.
Out of respect to the vendor, yes, absolutely. He has to make some decisions as well.
I hear you, Commissioner Matheson, I really do, but I just don't think, even if we had full antibody testing of the entire top country by then, I mean, you know, I'm saying even the city of Stewart, right? The whole city of Stewart, we have people that come in from all outside, you know, I think, and it doesn't confer immunity.
I'm just all for making decisions now rather than kicking things.
I wonder what the Board of Adjustment might have to say about this. Does,
Ellen McBride from 921 Flamingo Avenue in Stewart. I come down every day, I ride around town. And let me tell you, like Mike just told you, Flagler Park, Boardwalk, this picnic ground out in front of, well, it's not a picnic ground, there's tables and that. And at the band, and down here, each day there's more and more people. Like tonight, when I was coming to this meeting, I did my ride around, and there was 3 couples. They were kind of apart, but they weren't 6 feet. The picnic tables, there was quite a few people. Kids were playing basketball. And if you look down at the fishing pier, I don't know, there's a whole bunch of cars. It's well packed cars down there. Let's, you know, I was in the medical, I was a CNA now. Let me tell you, and let's look at Stewart. We're senior citizens, and everybody's worried. You have any parades or anything, even if it's a Memorial Park, I'm gonna be one of the ones out there. I'm here at this meeting, right? Because I'm bored. Unfortunately, it's not your fault. You want to do it. God love you. We know you want to help us all out and entertain us. I was there the last day when the beach was open. I went over at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Sunday afternoon. Should have been no one there.
Right.
Jam packed. One night was jam packed with cars. Guys, this is just, all right, we're going to lose this summer, this season. But we're going to save lives. So that, you know, I know you're elected officials and you want to do everything and make sure everybody, you know, you can't do it. But tell everybody now so they won't start planning. Oh, and they're even in downtown Stewart. The shops aren't open, but people are walking in downtown. So it's, it's one, World War II, this girl probably alive then, but we sacrificed. And I was only a kid, but I know we all had a sacrifice. This is a sacrifice we all have to make.
Thank you, Ms. McBride. Okay, well, so let them know. It's gonna hurt, but, and I know we love those fireworks, but this is the sacrifice we gotta make, needs before wants. I'd much rather be taking smaller measured risks to reopen our local businesses and get people back to work than screw it all by having a big party. I'd rather take the risk to actually get our people back to work.
And then our hospital system really gets crippled.
All right. So Mr. Dice, you've got pretty good direction. You're gonna kind of put together a 3-phase sort of thing, bring it back to us. Wow, 9 questions. Anything else, anybody?
Does that need to come back to you as a board item?
Oh, gosh.
I was wondering if you were
Oh, my
gonna-
gosh.
What Jim and Sebastian brought up tonight.
What, Jim?
I've been reading it.
So For the next meeting.
Meeting.
Jim, what is that?
I just didn't know if you needed official vote. All right, we're good.
They're both canceled, Jim. They're both canceled.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, all right, well, I'll adjourn this meeting now at 9:14 PM.